Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the tonight's school board meeting for the Langley School District, and I'm the board chair, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's meeting. To get started, I just want to go over a few things. The audiovisual recording, webcasting of our regular board meeting tonight. Those in attendance were informed that as per policy number 7, regular and special meetings of the board may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board reserves, as its sole discretion, via motion at any meeting, the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or portion of a meeting. Further, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of a meeting. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order at 7 p.m. And I'd like to start off with the acknowledgement that we are in the Langley School District, is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yayastol, Skakayayos working together, and Natsamat and Letsamat, uniting ourselves with one mind, one heart, to ensure that we support and inspire all learners to reach their full potential. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here tonight, and I've got a number of those that I'd like to recognize that are present here. First of all, a number from our partner groups. I see Human Asori just stepped in. I'm sorry I didn't get the gentleman beside you, but welcome as well. Very good. Tanya Barr, LTA President. Tanya, sir, where did I get Barr out of that? I'm not sure. Just change your name. Ellen Barnowski, LTA Vice President. Kim Anderson, the LPVPA Vice President. Alicia Rempel with DPAC President. And Jennifer Johnson, QP 1260. And she's the president, and along with her tonight is Taylor Hollibuff, QP 1260 vice president. Our staff present with us tonight. I'd like to welcome George Kozlovic. He's our director of instruction. Vincent Montefrio, our technical support specialist 2. Paul Bobeo is our technical support specialist 3. Delvaux, IT manager, infrastructure and security. Judy Swanson, our executive assistant. Joanne Abshire, our communications manager. Marcello Moino, our assistant superintendent. Lisa Lanchbury, our assistant superintendent. Shin Chan, assistant secretary treasurer. Woody Bradford, deputy superintendent. And Brian Isley, the secretary treasurer on my left, and Mel Gill, our superintendent on my right. Our trustees that are with us, Charlie Fox, and then Marnie Wilson, Tony Ward, Suzanne Perot, and Shelly Coburn, and David Todd, and I'm your chair, Rod Ross. And on to tonight's meeting. Next thing is the report from in-camera. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
It's been so long, I forgot. We have 4 meetings to report on. The items discussed at the in-camera meeting on June 21st, 2022 pertain to legal and personnel. The items discussed in the special in-camera meeting, which took place on August 26, 2022, pertain to legal and personnel. The items discussed at the in-camera meeting on September 6th pertain to personnel, and the items discussed at tonight's in-camera were personnel and property.
Thank you very much. Moving on. Number 4, consent agenda. I need a mover for tonight and a seconder, please, for tonight's consent agenda. The Board of Education adopts the consent agenda as presented. Oh, I forgot myself. My apologies. Suzanne Pro and seconded by David Todd. Thank you. And all those in favor of the consent agenda? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 5. Consideration of agenda. Can I have a mover for tonight's agenda, please? Charlie Fox and Marnie Ward. Marnie Wilson. Okay. That tonight's agenda be approved as presented. Can I get all those in favor, please? And it's carried. Thank you very much. All right, tonight we have a number of presentations. First of all, 6.1 is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So, Superintendent, I'll take this over to you.
Thank you, Chair, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce to you somebody who has spoken here several times, our district principal of Aboriginal, Mr. Michael Pugh, who's going to present for the board this evening, providing some background, some history, some context for the journey of Truth and Reconciliation and the date, September 30th.
Mike Quenisqui, Tanitsanak Langley, Hiatanatamo, Shmathwiath, Shquantlanath, Skateziath, A Semiamath Masteo, Hilag Tilashwelo and Kutsnits Kutsnala Tanawale, Aitzapka. I thank my language teacher, Sesmalot, Fern Gabriel, for teaching me the acknowledgement in the language of the land of Uncaminum, the downriver dialect. And it's always important that we start that way as it grounds the work we do. And I wanted to take today, this has been probably the first startup in a while where there hasn't been a drastic change in the world of Indigenous education in terms of leading into what we're recognizing on September 30th in my time and in your time as a board. And so I wanted to take that moment instead to reflect upon where we've been on the journey and to take those moments to ask questions and think about the future as we move forward. And so while I'll frame this around the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th, this is really about the bigger journey of truth and reconciliation within the district. It's about how we honor those warriors, as Chief Marilyn says, not survivors, but warriors, because they are still here and they fought to be here when they came out of residential school. And they continue to fight and their families continue to fight, and how important that is. I know I'm dressed a little casual for this evening, but this is a sweater gifted to me by Chief Marilyn with the artistry of Natasha Gabriel on the back from Kwantlen First Nation. And so I felt it important to wear it today as I come here to speak to you. As we start today's presentation, while grounding it with the language at the start, we'll kind of embed it within these ideas of the First Peoples Principles of Learning. That learning is embedded in memory, history, and story. It requires an exploration of one's identity. It recognizes the role of Indigenous knowledge, and it involves patience and time. If you look at the Aboriginal Ways of Knowing and Being document from the BCTF, which is very, very similar and interconnected, you see those connections. Learning honors our ancestors, elders, knowledge keepers, and descendants, those warriors, and those that did not return. That important teachings emerge through stories. The deepest learning takes place through lived experiences. It requires exploring our identities, learning from our mistakes, and having gratitude for our gifts. And learning is a journey that takes courage, patience, and humility. It's about striving to become a better human being and living with balance in body, mind, heart, and spirit. And so we have been on a journey. And we can't start a journey without recognizing where you started and where we started as a district. And it is vitally important that we recognize the work of these three individuals: Josette Dandurand, a warrior from Kwantlen, an elder who came in and shared herself with students over and over again as a cultural presenter. Her son, Luke Dandurand, an Aboriginal support worker in the district. And Cecilia Reiki, a valued member of the community, a cultural presenter within our district, and at the time of this, a trustee here for the Langley School District. And the passionate work she has done since to continue to move truth and reconciliation forward, including where many of you have been, down to Derek Doubleday Arboretum and the 215 crosses to represent those 215 children found in Kamloops a year and a half ago. And so these three individuals went to the TRC Commission returned and brought that idea that was spawning from the TRC Commission of Orange Shirt Day. And Orange Shirt Day spawned from this idea and from the story of Phyllis Webstad. The idea, if you haven't heard Phyllis's story, essentially she was sent to residential school in Williams Lake, where they are currently continuing to do further work. And there she had her orange shirt taken, never to be seen again. That orange shirt that was bought for her first day of school by her grandmother, like so many of us buy for our children, or so many of us bought for ourselves when we went to school, that incredible first day outfit. And she lost that orange shirt. And so the orange shirts that we're all wearing this evening in recognition is a conversation starter. This is the piece that began the journey and continued the work through the TRC. This is why we wear orange shirts, to reiterate over and over again that all children matter. Every child matters. And we're on a very interesting point in our journey as a district, because we have done some incredible, incredible work and some incredible, incredible learning as we move forward, and as I think where we've come from in 2015 to now. But what can often happen at this point is we say we've heard the stories. We know about what happened at residential school. We know what happened to those warriors. We know the truth. Let's move forward and do reconciliation. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know the truth. We know what's in books. We know what's been laid out from those who are willing to share themselves with us. But none of us here, likely, I'll take that back, I'm making an assumption. Many of us in this room do not have the lived experience of what so many of those warriors and survivors faced. And so we must continue to push ourselves to learn that truth and continue to listen. This is a powerful, powerful visual representation for those of you who are visual learners. There's so much that can be interpreted from this picture from Dion Paul, who put this out, I believe, in 2016. But that idea of the residential school legacy, stopping the language, stopping you from seeing your family, stopping you from hearing the culture and connecting to it, all while the rest of the students sit behind and say, stay quiet. Don't share your story. Don't learn the truth. This is just one of the ways that we've learned from and continue to learn from the truth. I also want to share with you here a video from the Ballantine Project, which lays out more of the history. And at this point where we're going to come in, this little clip is at the spot in the timeline where they've reached the Indian residential school agreement for funding. And I'll let it speak for itself.
Damage done from 1 year was worth $10,000. Every year after that was worth $3,000. The money was the value given for the loss of identity, family, tradition, culture, feelings of shame, suicidal thoughts, and the never-ending sense that you are lost and might not ever be able to be who you actually were meant to be. Then the survivors' children and grandchildren became a part of this pattern of lingering trauma. Things have just become part of our everyday life. Some of us escape the cycle, but lots of us feel like we are locked in a dark room. Purposefully hidden behind unseen barricades that were erected decades ago to keep us in the shadows. And if the country were to ask how we were doing, we would say that we feel like Canadians are finally starting to open their eyes to what has been happening for generations. There were more than 150,000 Aboriginal children who attended residential schools between 1857 and 1996. Every Canadian needs to know and acknowledge our history, to know the truth that for so long has been hidden. To let the survivors know that they have been heard, that they are seen, and all of the children, youth, and young adults who did not attend these schools, but who are the descendants of the survivors. We need to let them know that they are no longer invisible, that we see them.
That's a small clip of a longer movie from the Valentine Project, and you can find that online. That last part of the reason why I walked back that statement earlier. The importance of understanding the connection between the residential school system and not just those warriors who came home, but the effect, the trickle-down effect on the families that were still back at home, to those that came after, the descendants of those. And while residential schools closed in 1998, and many people will say that's in the past, there are still many staff, parents, and grandparents in our system that continue to feel those effects. I use this as another visual for those who want to talk about, well, I know the history. The history is all there. It's laid out in dates. You can read it. But to me, the powerful piece is at the bottom with all of those water droplets that come off of the umbrella. These are problems in society that we are trying to fight on a daily basis. Addictions, suicide, family violence, poverty, lack of parenting skills, abuse. And yet we address each one as its own thing. We try to tackle addictions. We try to tackle suicide separately, poverty, not understanding that all of those, especially for Indigenous peoples, are interrelated and interconnected. And it goes back to why we need to know the truth. We can't simply put actions in place for those things if we don't take the time to learn the truth. And so I go back to these wise words from a student from Aldergrove Community Secondary School. We need to care about knowing more, even when you think you've heard it 1,000 times. Listen, hear, learn. There is healing in the telling of our histories, and reconciliation is in the willingness to learn and listen. And that journey of reconciliation is vitally important here in this district. And we've done some incredible work, some incredible learning just this year alone. And we follow that work of reconciliation under the guiding principles of one heart, one mind, Latsamat, Natsamat. That idea of working together, Yayastal or Skekoyois. And under the watchful eye of the house post, the protector of all children, gifted to us by Kwantlen First Nation. These guiding principles are what guides our work on reconciliation. And when I've talked to you before, we've talked about reconciliation and education, really focusing on those two principles, holding Indigenous knowledge as equal and examining my own relationship to Indigenous peoples. And when we talk about examining our relationship, it's what do I know? How have I come to know it? And what implications does it have for my classroom, my teaching, my daily work, my work as a trustee, my work as the superintendent? Really reflecting upon that. And we see that starting place as the 9th teaching standard, where educators, and I'm not talking just teachers, I'm not talking just administrators, anybody in the education system, in fact, all people, but for this case, all people involved in education, need to critically examine their own biases, attitudes, beliefs, values, and practices to facilitate change. Work in this district around reconciliation will be shallow if we don't address those at the heart of a lot of the issues. So the question is, well, what should I do? Come September 30th, what do I do? Well, if you haven't already done so, sit down with those 94 calls to action. If there is one thing you do on Friday, sit with the calls to action. Read through them. Understanding that, I found this on Instagram. I use all sorts of social media here to get information. So from the Native Women's Association of Canada, that the idea behind those goals, so often we look at them and we say, well, that's the work of the church. That's the work of the federal government. That's the provincial government. That's the work of the monarchy. It's not about that. Those first goals, 1 to 42, are about working together to fully and publicly acknowledge the cultural genocide that's been committed. And understanding that the rest of the goals, 43 through 94, are about meaningfully and permanently dismantling the systemic racism that negatively impacts Indigenous peoples, while at the same time improving the lives of Indigenous peoples, ensuring that something like this will not happen again. And when we've talked about the work of anti-racism or dismantling systemic racism in society, we talk about how it's going to take a long time. And yet so often when we talk about this, we talk about, let's get down to it. Let's do reconciliation. We know this takes time. Learning takes patience and time. So take the time. And as you're doing it, I go back to Kevin Lamoureux, what he shared with us in Ensoling Our Schools. Ask yourself, why is this being asked of us? If you don't know the answer, go find out. And when you know that, you can answer that second question. How would we be a better community or society if this call to action was fulfilled? You see, both Kevin and Murray Sinclair have talked about, we've described for you a mountain. We've shown for you the path to the top. We call upon you to do the climbing. This is not a walk. This is difficult work. It is a climb. And for the 7 of you this evening, you may have reached the peak together as a team. But what I call upon you to do now, for those of you who are not returning, and for those of you who hope to return, regardless of the outcome on October 15th, continue to do the climbing. You've learned enough to go out on your own and do this work and continue to move forward. And maybe you will be back here to be part of the team to continue to do some of that learning. Maybe you'll be elsewhere, but continue to focus and do that work. And in our district, so much of that work is focused right here on Ensoling Our Schools, about creating compassionate and inclusive social and academic learning communities that provide access for every learner, not just Indigenous learners, not some learners, but all learners. And it's around that sense of belonging, that sense of connection in the classroom, in the school, in the day-to-day work. And those systems and structures and instructional practice feed into that. And so what better way to sum up all of that work than to go to the author himself and simply share with you again the purpose of why we do what we do.
The ultimate goal of Ensoling Our Schools, the ultimate goal of that book that Jennifer wrote that I have a small part of, I can summarize it for you like this. The same way I've done in the past, I'll do it again. The whole purpose of that book is to create the kind of school environment where kids can come into that building and go, and know that they're safe. To know that this is a place of safety and a place of belonging. That where schools in British Columbia were used as weapons against kids, our schools can be places of healing. Places where our children know to hold their head up high with pride and dignity. Places where our children know that they are loved unconditionally. As Yuri Brofenberger has said, to love unconditional our children. And to look in a mirror and to be able to love who they see and what they see. And to be proud of who they come from. And you'll notice I didn't say Indigenous kids, I said all of our kids. Because if I understand the teachings of the survivors, those that gave us this gift of reconciliation, we're only doing reconciliation the right way when all of our children are able to experience safety. Okay? When all of our children are able to enjoy a sense of belonging, a sense of safety in our schools.
So once again, regardless of the outcome on October 15th and wherever you may go, please care about knowing more. Reconciliation is in the willingness to listen and to learn. Ejka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pugh. On to 6.2, honoring our trustees. So, oh, pardon me? No. So what I'd like to do is, I've got some special things I'd like to read out here. On behalf of the Langley Board of Education, I'd like to take a moment to pause, reflect, and express our appreciation of two members of our team who will be retiring from the service as trustees. These two individuals have been instrumental in helping us meet our mission to inspire all learners to reach their full potential and leave a positive legacy for the future. Trustees Shelley Coburn and David Todd have worked tirelessly for multiple terms, serving the public, and as representatives being the voice of students and staff. Collectively as a board and on their own, they've been strong advocates who through compassion and courage have truly made a difference in the lives of students. Trustee Coburn has served on the board for 8 years. She's been devoted to equity and inclusion as a champion of our Vanguard school community. You've always led with love, confidence, and grit, and continually advocate for those most vulnerable in our community. Thank you. I especially appreciate the work that you did on the Knox Alarm stuff. That was wonderful. Trustee David Todd has served the board for 8 years as well, has been a thoughtful, caring listener who has worked hard to raise and address the concerns from families on the slope and to ensure equity across the system. His actions have been an example for all of us to continue as we move forward with the challenges of growth. The Rainbow Crosswalk at the school board office is another clear example of his impact on the community as a community builder and an advocate for diversity and inclusion. It is important to note that although Trustee Coburn and Trustee Todd are physically departing, they're leaving a positive legacy for the future. Langley Schools will be in good hands, and thanks them for it. Congratulations on your retirement, on your graduation. Please join us in the front here. I'd like to officially acknowledge you, and I've got a little gift that I'd like to give you both. So if you just join with me for a moment. Simple. It's pretty fixed.
Oh, it's right there. Oh, there's great for there.
What it is. I think blue is for boys. Green is for great. Anyway, so much want to say. Appreciate you. And you couldn't have done it without you. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Big round of hands. So we'll have party words at the end of the night. So we'll get playing on And again, trustees, at the end of tonight, you'll have an opportunity to say your thanks to our departing trustees. All right. And back to tonight's agenda. So I'd like to move on to 7, 7.1, the superintendent's report. So we've got 7.1, the board evaluation. And would you like to speak to this first before I get movers and seconders, or should we get a mover and seconder first? What would you prefer? All right, let's do mover and seconder. I'll get a mover for to put this on the agenda. So Marnie Wilson, thank you. And seconded by David Todd. All right, thank you. And go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ross. I'd just like to take this opportunity just to briefly describe the process that the board has undertaken over the past few months regarding the board evaluation. First, it's been an honor to be a part of that evaluation process. I appreciate the transparency and honesty of the board in reflecting on the past 4 years and specifically the last year, and for me personally, the last 8 or 9 months together. It's been a great journey, and I do want to thank the group of you in our last regular board meeting. As per policy 2 Appendix B, the board is required yearly to go through a board evaluation process. And this year we began our process May 17th with our former superintendent, Suzanne Hoffman, who led us through the process. She is now the CEO of BC School Trustees Association. After our initial meeting, we were able to kind of get to a place where we were able to kind of start to think about our next steps. And part of those next steps was a survey that was completed not just by the trustees, but by senior staff as well. And then on August 27th, as a group, we went through the results of those the survey. So the purpose itself really is, the bottom line is about board effectiveness and the work that we do together. Really in looking at the roles that each of us has at the table, the relationships we share, not just with one another, but with the community, our communications with our partner groups, with one another, between us as trustees and senior staff, the relationship that you have as trustees with myself as a superintendent, governance, and of course, the most important part of the work, which is student learning. And as boards, we've really been focusing in on, through policy 2, what it is as your particular responsibility, and again, outlined in that policy, and you've had an opportunity to read through that. I'm not going to get into too much more detail, but obviously going through the actual evaluation, going through all 9 components of responsibility would have been too much. So we did focus in on 4 different areas. We talked about the development and maintaining of a culture of student learning, accountability to the community and our partners, board development and governance. And of those 4, certainly the notice from the facilitator, Ms. Hoffman, and through the survey and through the conversations that we had, that consensus was clear that we felt that developing and maintaining a culture of student learning was our strength. And that's shown through our strategic plan, through the work that we've done collectively, with our partners, with our community, and certainly reflected in your own beliefs and who you represent in the voting public of Langley. So you've done a fantastic job of that, and certainly all of you should be commended. An area of further research and work for us as a group, and I think this is probably a place where I think all boards will find themselves, is really in trying to define the gray area between the work that is being done by staff and the work that's being done and responsible for by trustees. And I think really the overlap that occurs there really comes from a place of caring, and it almost reflects back to that strength that we have collectively around the student-centered approach. All of us having, I think, the right heart, and our minds sometimes have a different path, but the heart is certainly in the right place. So where we come to from that is, oops, I'm going the wrong way there, is that we've come to next steps for us as a group. Again, staff is preparing an onboarding process for the new board, as we know that the elections are coming up. We've been working with the BCSTA and looking at facilitators who could help us work through that process, and trustees have indicated that it'd be best that we have an outside person walking us through that process. During the candidate meeting, I had all of our trustee candidates mark off December 1st to 3rd, as it is the BC STA Academy, an opportunity not just to learn, but certainly connect and build as a team. And then we'll work with the new facilitator to come up with a professional learning plan that I think, again, for all of the individual trustees and collectively, so that we continue to work on the areas that we need to work on to ensure that we're supporting our students. The last, we just heard from our district principal and talked about truth and reconciliation, looking at getting some facilitated support around cultural safety as well. As a group. And again, all of these have come from the work that we've been doing together as a board. And I think it's an opportunity for us to grow and prepare the next board as we walk together. I do want to just comment on the last 4 years. I think as a board, as a group, we've made tremendous progress in supporting our ultimate goal, that's student success. Certainly the data would tell you that there's been major improvements, but certainly we still have lots of work to do. And for those of you that are returning, we'll continue to do that work in the same way that we've done it in the past. But we've been able to find common ground, and I appreciate that. We've been able to find the heart that we needed, I think collectively as a team, even though we started in different places. And I think right from the get-go, I think I mentioned to the group of the 7 of you that individually, I know that your hearts are in the right place. And I think in the last, certainly with the work that we've done together, I feel like our hearts and minds have certainly come together as well. And so for that, I commend you. I commend you for having respectful dialogue, not just during the process that we went through, but I commend you for having that respectful dialogue at times where we had some debates where we didn't necessarily agree with one another. And that can be difficult and certainly can split a team, but I think it brought us closer together as a group. Lastly, I do want to take this opportunity to thank 2 fantastic trustees who will not be returning, to Trustee Todd for your work, certainly the LGBTQ plus committee, the work that you've done in supporting the Willoughby Slope, your energy, your care for all students, your thoughts. Always start with the student first, and that's always been appreciated. And certainly we'll miss you. We'll miss your voice. We'll miss your presence as a trustee, but off to better things and bigger things for you. Maybe not better, but certainly bigger things. And Trustee Coburn, again, to you, thank you for the work that you've done over the years. I think about a number of things. I think of your connection with Vanguard and the opportunity to hear you speak at Vanguard Grad. Your absolute passion for kids that otherwise were not the priority. You pushed us. You pushed us hard in a lot of our meetings, sometimes, making us feel uncomfortable, but certainly for all the right reasons and getting us to a good place. So for that, I thank you. You've made your contributions to the board have made a difference in the lives of kids as well. So thanks to both of you for all of your work. I'm happy to take questions.
And I do have a speakers list at this point. So we start out with speakers list. I've got Charlie Fox first, and then anyone else? Would you like to as well, Marty Wills? Marty, thank you.
Question, I have a comment. Many of you know I'm the new guy on the block. I'm the oldest, but I'm the newest. Bit of a dichotomy there, right?
New kid.
Yeah, yeah. As many of you know, I sat for 4 terms in a governance model in the municipal context. And when this idea of a board self-evaluation came up and we had little or no choice but to do it, I kind of like looking in a mirror. And I sort of, holy smokes, now I got to sort of evaluate myself, but then we have to evaluate within the context of the board and how we've done in a job that I haven't really been a part of since day one. So that put me in a little bit of a deficit situation in that context. But I have to say, at the end of it, and I reflected on this, we did our last session up in Whistler together. Driving home, I really think all governance boards should do this. All elected governance boards should do this. It really made me think about who I am and what my role is here. And it really made me think about the interaction I've had with six other elected colleagues, plus our senior staff. Why am I here? And I really had to answer that question. Going through the board self-evaluation, and Superintendent Gills touched on a bit about the process and a bit about the outcomes and a bit about what's ahead. And that's a really important thing, because I think what we've got to do is take that information and work with that information and make ourselves better as individuals and ourselves better as a board. I really appreciated going through it. I appreciated the honesty, the respectfulness, the collegiality that we went through in the process. The leadership of past Superintendent Hoffman, who was a colleague of mine. And sometimes it's difficult when you're working directly in a colleague situation like that, because you have to do a little bit of bearing your soul in the open. And that's not always easy, but I think it was a very fruitful exercise, excellent outcomes, excellent discussion. And I really think that it will make for better board relations and outcomes in the future. So thank you for doing it. I think it's a goal that we need to put into practice in the next four-year term, regardless of who's sitting around here, because I think the important piece is we can always do just a little bit better. And we've proven that within ourselves, and we've admitted that to the public, and we're going to do it.
Thank you, Charlie Fox. On to Marnie Wilson. Go ahead.
Just came on its own this time. Yeah, I definitely have some of the same thoughts that have been said here, and I just want to let the public know that this was brought in sort of halfway through our term when we changed to a lot of our policies to new policies, and so it is an annual review that will continue to go forward now. COVID kind of threw a little bit of a wrench into the timing as well. And there was thoughts of perhaps not starting this until the next board came, but I'm so appreciative that we went through the process. I felt we learned so much, and whether, you know, we're here or other people are here, I just feel like it's valuable. It's valuable. Staff will be here regardless, so they'll now know the process better. And I think it was tough. There's tough times when you're going over who is in charge of what and knowing your roles. And there was a lot that came out of that meeting. And I think that we are putting that into place for the next board, putting that education piece into place, which is important. And I'm glad that we recognize the importance of the cultural safety that we needed on this board and are putting that into place for the next board. And one of the big things for me was because we had Suzanne Hoffman come, and she is the CEO of the BCSTA. She took back our information and, you know, probably at Trustee Academy and for all the trustees in the province, she is going to, you know, implement some of what she learned from us and realizes there's a bit of a gap probably with other boards as well, and put that into place. So I think that we did well, not just for our own board, but I think that we did some good for other boards. So I just want to say that I'm happy for that, and the next board will continue that work. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Trustee Marnie Wilson. Go on to Trustee Pearl.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Trustee Wilson, for noting that it is an annual evaluation, because it's a really important evaluation. I just want to commend my colleagues for working so hard collectively on this process. It took an incredible amount of stamina and clarity on each of our parts to come together, and character. And it was a really exceptional process, and a process that I think not only crystallize the level of unity and understanding that we have as a board in terms of the vision and mission of this district as it relates into the strategic plan, but also the outcomes of that evaluation and how the onboarding is going to be able to occur for the next board coming in, whomever they may be, giving them that foundation for that. And so I just wanted to echo that in and thank our district leadership team for supporting us through that process, because it was a very invaluable experience, and I think it was a bonding experience. And I think that we will be enriched as a district because of it, and a worthwhile venture that we engaged on that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because it was a good process, and I was really personally highly encouraged after unfortunately coming to the end of our term, but seeing how unified we are as a board in our ideas, in our vision, and as our superintendent had indicated, in our heart condition towards what we do as trustees to support our staff and students in the district. So I want to acknowledge that and thank my colleagues for that really great experience, and our leadership team for supporting us.
Thank you, Trustee Perot, and no other comments. My only comment is that, I mean, we've all had a lot of professional development over the years, and I have to say that Suzanne Hoffman just really knocked it out of the field. She was just absolutely wonderful. We're all really engaged in everything, and I just was very pleased with the process, and looking forward to as we move forward as well. So I've got the motion, mover and seconder. I'll now call the question. The Board of Education received the report on the board evaluation for information. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. 7.2 school startup. Board of Education receives the report on school startup for information as presented. Let's just get started first.
I'm going to pass the floor to Assistant Superintendent Moino and Assistant Superintendent Lanchbury, who are going to provide us with the report for school startup.
Good evening. Assistant Superintendent Lanchbury and I are very pleased to be able to share with you some of the details of startup. Of course, we're not all the way through startup yet, but I think we've had a very good start. And again, we're very honored to be able to share some of those details with you. The last 2 years, this section has started with the COVID-19 protocols update. So for a third year, we'd like to give you a start in terms of some information. In terms of what we shared with our administrators, what was shared with us by the Minister of Education, a couple of important pieces. First, that COVID-19 is still with us. And at the same time, we also follow the BC CDC, Provincial Health Officer, and Fraser Health guidelines. At the same time, we wanted to make sure our administrators were very conscious of the fact that individuals, communities have been impacted differently, and to be very sensitive to that impact. In terms of operationally, the Minister of Education shared with us on August 25th that there would be no big shifts from how last year ended. The goal is about spread prevention through personal practices. In terms of what that looks like in schools, extracurricular activities, assemblies, and food programs were able to continue as before the pandemic. In terms of ministry priorities at the BC SSA conference, the Superintendent's Conference, the Ministry of Education presented over the 2 days, and the key message that they had was about truth and reconciliation, the idea that every child matters. And as they shared suggestions about what different districts could do to recognize that, I think it's fair to say that the district leadership team felt that we were moving in the right direction in Langley. At the same time, there were several other priorities that the ministry shared, most of which are from previous years and so are continuations. I want to bring a special emphasis to mental health. Again, in terms of COVID, after 2 years of COVID, the impact on staff and students is something that the ministry does recognize, and has certainly encouraged districts to be very cognizant of that in how we run day to day. The last piece I wanted to emphasize was the Student and Family Affordability Fund. That is a new fund this year. There is at present a district committee that is working on setting a plan for that and working to ensure that we consult within the guidelines as presented by the Ministry of Education. Superintendent Gill then shared with administrators at the start of this year that with all that's going on in the world, he wanted to focus this district very much on three very specific pieces. The first was developing effective professional learning communities, and in doing so would make a difference in terms of all learners in this district, staff and students. The second goal was to ensure that administration was aware of trauma-informed practices, and one example being the Ukuru training that is happening throughout the entire district this school year. And finally, the teaching and learning framework is a goal for this year as we look to impact instructional strategies and assessment strategies in the classroom. All of these for the benefit of every single student, every single learner. Those three goals very much link to the three hallmarks of the Ensoling Our Schools strategy that this district has been working with over the last 2 years. Each of these blocks, these foundational blocks, is represented in each one of those goals. And again, with the basic idea that the basic goal, the most important piece, is that we do all this work so that we create compassionate and inclusive social and academic learning communities that provide access for every single learner. Assistant Superintendent Lanesbury.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Molina. And as we prepare such learning environments, we welcome our new and returning students. We are right now planning for 600 plus K-8 students, and the final count coming at the end of September. And for secondary, again, we're working on those counts right now and timetabling, and we'll know more at the end of the month. But we know right now that we are up from last year's numbers. So as we welcome our new and returning students, we are focusing on providing classroom spaces and furniture. We are focusing on staffing, admin, our hiring and leading learning in schools through staff development, and of course, working with our families. Summer professional development took place August into September with a focus on new and returning teachers. And you can see some of the topics covered in those learning experiences. Reading and numeracy instruction, truth and reconciliation, creating inclusive classroom, and trauma-informed practice. And in the schools themselves, again, admin focusing on professional development, connecting and collaborating, working to start up in a positive way in creating those culture of learning and collaboration in schools. And already we've been able to celebrate that some Meet the Teacher nights have occurred and have had lots of exciting reports back from the meeting of the families and the connecting with the students in that way. We had the opportunity last week, a very special event to host trustees and celebrate our Aldergrove school community. We went to Betty Gilbert and Aldergrove Secondary, where Mr. John O'Harris and Mr. Mike Pelachuk hosted us and really celebrated the motions that the trustees approved last year and recommended for our moving forward. And as you can see by the visuals here, there's so much to celebrate. And I also wanted to mention that there was a lot to celebrate at Short Reed and Parkside as well. And hopefully we have an opportunity to tour those communities in the future. We're really looking forward to continuing our work with these communities, and the pride and the passion and the excitement of the staff and students really shone through during those tours. And it's really exciting time for the Aldergrove community. And just one final story with the Nickel-Meckle Elementary School startup. Like all of our school communities, we're really focusing on our why as educators and how we can support our students and families moving forward. And the First Peoples principle that learning is embedded in memory, history, and story really focuses on the importance of story and knowing the individual story of children and families. Everybody comes with their own history, their own experience, and their own context. And it's our work to get to know and to welcome all of those experiences into our school. And this is just one of the collaborative questions that was offered on that morning to get that dialogue occurring in the schools. In what ways have you prepared to hear and honor your student stories? So it's not listening, it's listening and really honoring what we are being told. And we're really excited to, again, work with all of our schools, and because we believe that every child matters, and that's our work, to honor all children and to work together to support the work that we have in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I know there's some questions from trustees, and first trustee, go ahead, Suzanne Farrell.
Awesome. Okay, I'm trying to be ready. Sorry. All right, I have two questions. Is that okay? Awesome. Through the chair to Assistant Superintendent, you mentioned about the importance of mental health and being cognizant on that conversation day to day. Can you tell me what that looks like in practice for us?
So first off, just in a very, and from a larger perspective, the ministry is providing some funding to be able to support that. We've been working with HR, and again, last year, a very important survey occurred in which HR, as well as, I guess, a guiding coalition, ended up surveying all staff in the district. And so the district will be, with that guiding coalition, will be looking at that data to see what were points of impact, what were areas that staff felt very strongly about, and what are areas that we felt that the district could do more and could do better. And so the committee is actually unpacking that as a group, and that they'll be bringing that out to the different employee groups as they do that.
Awesome. So if I can just cross into that, when we talk about doing the data, are we going to pull our, and maybe this is a better question for our superintendent, pull our Department for Indigenous Community, our inclusive education, and our youth and child, and all those groups there, because those are going to be our staff members and our educational assistants who are going to be highly impacted by these conversations. Will we be assessing those groups?
So the original data that we had was only meant for larger groups, so partner groups in general, not specific to work, specific areas of work. So will we be surveying them again? Yes, at the end of the process with a similar survey, so we get a before and after survey. So specifically around each group, we haven't actually had that conversation, or at least I haven't had it at this level. It may well be haven't been had at the wellness table, but we'll again let them dig into that process. As you know, Trustee Pro, we have representation from all of our partners at that table, and I think having them guide that work will be best at this time.
Preempted second question. Through the chair to Assistant Superintendent Lanchberry. First, I really love that conversation you are working with Nikomek on listening with intent. So important that we're creating those questions for staff. So to be teaching us, all of us benefit from that, moving towards that place of listening to intent versus answering. That mindfulness is such an important part of trauma-informed practices. So I just wanted to compliment you on that. But with respect to when we're thinking about things like the Aldergrove School community, and we're looking at how we're supporting community, can you help me, or maybe yourself or superintendent, on what we might be doing in our district to be supporting our community regarding that childcare conversation that we've been interfacing with, and what steps we could be looking at moving forward with, or are moving forward with? Where are we at in that, please?
So are you referring to the after the bell?
Yes.
Okay, so again, just a little bit of history from the district. just around the program itself in the Aldergrove region and the impact that's had. Certainly a difficult situation that's put our community in, and certainly we're doing everything we can as a district to support parents. We're kind of working a little bit kind of behind the 8 ball because of the timing of the situation, because we got word of this late. That's just before that September 6th week, so that first week of school. So I think parents were made aware of the situation on the Thursday. We became aware formally on the Friday. And so we've been scrambling a little bit trying to get some feedback as to, you know, work that we can do to support so that we ensure that there's care for those families. We have reached out to the Director of Recreation to kind of make a determination as to what we could do to support. Certainly it seems to the district that it seems to be a staffing issue for them. So they're still apparently trying to get staffing. We offered to certainly support in advertising the program, because one of the issues was there certainly wasn't enough students that were or families that were taking them up on the option. But I think the uncertainty certainly led to the low registration. We are continuing to press and see anywhere we can help as far as the Beyond the Bell program, but beyond that, as a district, we continue to work with the Aldergrove community around the Seamless Day K piece. We've got 10 new spaces that are opening up, and those will be prioritized for our Ks, and certainly opened up to grade 1 should we have more space available. We continue to have meetings with our partners to trying to determine if we can provide some kind of opportunity in the Aldergrove region that can be more long-term, that the district can be involved in. That being said, I think the work that's being done right now is around looking at licensing. So licensing our learning commons in our schools, so that neutral space can be a space that we can start to look at providing care using district staff. But again, there's some pieces that need to be worked out. There's lots of conversations we need to have still, and we continue to kind of look down that road, but it's early. Like we said, we found out late, and I know that District Principal Anderson has been doing a ton of work in that area and working with our HR to start the conversations with our partners. And as well, there are different funds that we can access. We're looking at those as well through exploring new spaces funding as well, that we we'll be looking at putting in applications as well. So the thought isn't to try and solve that problem short term, like really quick tomorrow, but really to look at setting up something stable for families in that community, because we certainly want to ensure that we're providing all we can as far as support for them as we come in that community.
Thank you, Trustee Perreault. Now on to Trustee Marnie Wilson. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. I knew it was going to work eventually, but just pushed it a lot. I have a couple of questions, but I'm sure they link somehow. So you mentioned the employee survey that went out, and I believe, I'm trying to look back at how long ago it was. I think it was like 18 months ago. Can't really be completely sure. Oh, okay. So not even a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if we have any sort of timeline, and maybe this is a question for the superintendent, just on if we're going to come up with action items, or we're planning around a timeline for when we will start to implement some action items. So we saw that the survey did point out some areas that we could improve in, and I just wondered if we have a timeline for that.
Deputy Superintendent Bradford's been working with that committee, so I'm going to ask him if he would like to jump in on this question.
For the Healthy Schools, Healthy Staff, in terms of what we're working through with the advisory group, we've obviously last year we had the dinner evenings that were a great opportunity for us to collect information in reflection of that survey. And what we want to make sure that we're doing as we move forth is taking a look at the umbrella of the mental health strategies that have been put out by the ministry, and ensuring that in each one of those areas that we're, as an advisory team, putting people in place that can action those items and be successful with it. So an example would be the compassionate systems leaders component of that mental health strategy, in terms of what are we doing as a system to ensure we build capacity across the whole system. So as a district leadership team, how do we ensure the principals and vice principals and leaders in our school have that lens as they work through it? Another area would be a strategy around mental health through the early learning piece. So we have a district principal of early learning that provides action within schools around early learning, and what does that look like under the mental health strategies in schools. So a combination of taking what we learned from the survey, combining it with what the ministry has said in the direction, the advisory group working together just to look at specific actions with under that umbrella so that we can have impact in the schools. The timeline for that, October 25th, we will have another dinner evening where we come together. The advisory group has already met once, and coming together with all the people on that committee to take a look at the vision we have for that committee and what we could actually accomplish this year to be successful. We just met this past week to really look at what the vision this year is going to be for that committee and the work that we're going to do. And out of that, we will decide on specific actions that we need to try and accomplish before the end of the year.
Just to add to that, we as a leadership team also have committed to making healthy schools and the wellness component a part of the strategic plan as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And my follow-up question that's not really related, but I said it was, is the Yukuru training that we got to witness firsthand up in Whistler, and I was very impressed. And especially because there was, so many principals and vice principals and district leadership team all engaging in it. I just wonder, is there a timeline for sort of when each group of staff, or how it's being rolled out in the schools, or where we're at with who's had it and who's getting it? Or are you aware of the timeline?
Approximate timeline. I know though that that through the learning support services and HR are working together in terms of that timeline, but I can share with you that specifically trustees and the district leadership team and the strategic team were amongst the first to be trained in the district, so that we as systems leaders would know very clearly where this was going and make sure that we had that support. So that occurred last year. We started the year with every single administrator going in the Langley School District going through that training. And the next phase was first day of school, complex needs programs. All staff members in those programs were trained. I know that right now there are certain schools that we're focusing in on in terms of where the greatest need is. And so those staffs are undergoing training as well. And that will be, I believe, on September 23rd, this Friday. And so from that, it's that we're trying to make sure that we get this out as quickly as possible, but trying to do it in a way that respects the fact that we only have so many trainers, and that we don't want to stretch them thin. And so it's finding that balance between doing it quickly, but also making sure we're doing it well.
Any other comments from trustees? Okay, my only comment is that I would like to know the numbers. You're saving those for another time. You said 600. Last year we grew by 900. So are you guys thinking we're going to be around the same, or or is it still too early?
So when we did the grids for elementary and middle, those numbers are far more clear to us, and we're probably in the mid 600s, up from last year for elementary and middle. Secondary, there's still a lot of work being done on timetable, and we do know at secondary that we're up, but we can't comment yet definitively how much until those timetables are completed. And we hope to have that in the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I mean, if we did 900 2 years in a row, I mean, that's becomes a trend. So last year I thought was a bit of an anomaly, but we're definitely in a growth zone. Any other comments from trustees? Okay, I need to get a mover and a seconder for the school startup. So a mover by David Todd and And we'll get someone on this side of the table. Marnie Wilson, thank you. There you go. That the Board of Education receives a report on school startup for information as presented. All those in favor, please? And this carried unanimously. Thank you. Page 7.3, framework for enhanced student learning. I need a mover and seconder for this discussion. Moved by Charlie Fox, seconded by Tony Ward. There you go, Mr. Ward. And on to, is this the superintendent?
It is, yes. So it's the second year of the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning report. As trustees will know, we've talked already about the strategic plan in our 4-year plan, and through our strategic plan as well, we try and narrow down our focus yearly through the strategic plan. But a real roadmap for the direction that we're going is really built through the FESL, and I want to commend the work that our Director of Instruction, George Kozlovic, has done, and our Deputy Superintendent, Woody Bradford, have done on this document, really in taking the feedback that we got from the ministry and then being able to implement that on the on the document itself. I'll stop talking because I think I'm taking away their presentation. So, Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Superintendent Gill. We good? Okay. So in terms of the framework for enhancing student learning, as Superintendent Gill noted, this is now our second year going through the annual reporting practice of using this document as a guide for us that aligns with our strategic plans and also aligns with our action plans within our schools. So you can look at it like it's a district action plan for a year. It's a year that we take, it's a document that we take every year and we review under the guidelines of a shared commitment to improve student success and equity of learning outcomes for every student in the public education system, obviously specifically in our district, Langley. We want to make sure that the framework reflects a public commitment by Indigenous peoples and Indigenous right holders and educational partners to work together to continuously improve student learning for each student and to address long-standing differences in performance among particular groups of students, most notably Indigenous students, children in care, and students with diverse needs. So the why and the how behind the framework for enhancing student is certainly important for us to continue to reflect on as we build this document. And as Superintendent Gill said, our Director of Instruction, Mr. Kozlovic, along with our District Principal of Aboriginal Education, Mike Pugh, have worked diligently to put together the actions within the document that align with the goals and the evidence that goes along to ensure that we're moving in the right direction. So trustees will know that when we went through this process through the ministry and across the province, there was actually a peer review process that each document went through. So districts from around the province gave feedback through criteria that was built collaboratively across the whole province around when you think about an annual report that was going to be collecting information around student learning, what would it look like and how would it look to be successful in each of the areas? For our district, they focused in on 3 areas specifically and gave us specific feedback in these 3 areas. First area was looking at the data that we collected and illuminating emerging areas of need and inequities within student learning. So drilling the data down. The next piece they looked at specifically is around effective strategic engagement process with a priority on engaging Indigenous peoples and communities, First Nations communities, and other equity seeking groups. And then finally, how our district operational plans align with the student learning goals that we have within the FESL. So those are the 3 areas that Mr. Kozlovic and Mr. Pugh really worked alongside each other collaboratively with their departments, along with our Learning Support Services Department to really focus in on these 3 areas to be successful. If we reflect on those 3 areas, the peer review group gave us some feedback and strengths. They recognized that we had the information in there from the system, the school, and the classroom level. There was a triangulation between those pieces of data, and that the structure that we're using was very accessible and easy to go through in terms of what we were trying to achieve for our students. They recognized that the Now What section in our Enhancing Student Learning implied that we were engaging in conversations around the FESL itself, but that word imply sat with us, and I'll share a little bit more in terms of how we drilled that down. And then they noticed that there was clear operational goals and metrics, and what our next steps were in terms of looking at these 3 was through the lens of considerations. Mr. Kosmic's going to talk about the first one around the now what in terms of as we drill the data down, what are the specific actions we are going to be working on as a district through this year to be successful. The next area in terms of implying the engagement with our different partner groups, we focus that down into 3 different areas. And I think the first run at this is through the framework. We probably didn't articulate ourselves well enough, but trustees would know on the board that we work closely with our Indigenous partners, specifically through IASTAL. And at IASTAL, it was brought to the table in the end of last year to go through just gathering that feedback in terms of what we were doing in the now what sections to ensure that that table's voice was heard in the document. And Mr. Pugh led that through the IASTAL committee. The other piece that we ensured that we worked through when we think about IASTAL working together, the other part that we wanted to ensure is gathering student voice. So through the youth engagement project, through district principal Maggie Gabriel and district vice principal Aya Hare, the youth engagement process was a perfect opportunity to go and gather feedback from students and have their voice in our framework for enhancing student learning. And then finally, last year, you would remember our Superintendent Gill, led us through the focus groups around gathering feedback from the different stakeholders that we work alongside so that we could, again, have their voice within the festival itself, which would align with the strategic plan. And then finally, just the last piece of time, the operational plans. When we think of finance and facilities and also human resources, we have now added appendices to the document so that you can see that in the festival that our human resources department, our finance and facilities have specific goals that align with the educational goals that have specific actions and evidence that we're collecting through the cycle of continuous improvement. Mr. Cosmic.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Bradford. So as Mr. Bradford said, my role tonight is just to touch on a couple of the goals and a couple of specific actions within those goals. I'm not going to go through every single action. Trustees were provided with the document, and so you've have access to it. As you know, it's a fairly lengthy document, so there's lots of actions in there. But just to try to bring some connections between the goals, the data, and then the actions that we're doing. And so as Deputy Superintendent Bradford said, as you know, each section is divided into 3 clear things. The kind of here's what, so what's our goal, the so what and the now what, the data, and then kind of the now what. Sorry, so the so what is sort of the data and what we know, and then the now what is what are we going to do. So we have a goal around literacy, which is all of our students will meet or exceed literacy expectations for each grade level. Or their individual IEP or AIP goals. And as Mr. Bradford said, we do triangulate the data. We don't just look at one thing. We look at classroom assessments, we look at district assessments, we look at provincial assessments when we're looking at the data. So what is the data telling us around literacy? Well, overall, we are seeing really good improvement in many areas when it comes to literacy, especially around our reading results at all grade levels. We're seeing improved literacy results on our FSA results. The only area where we're seeing any sort of potential issue is around our district writing results. And then the last piece is that specifically to those groups that we've spoken about and that Deputy Superintendent Bradford mentioned, while their results are increasing, we still are noticing that their overall results are still lower than students that aren't in those categories. So obviously that's still an area of concern for us. So again, what are some of the now what's? And again, being very clear that there's many other now what's that we're doing. These are just a couple of our big actions. But one of our main actions that we've done is very similar to last year. You'll remember we came out with a balanced numeracy guide. And prior to this year, we actually had 3 different balanced literacy guides. We had one for kindergarten, one for primary, and one for intermediate. And what we've done is we've actually taken all of those guides and actually created one consistent, cohesive guide that covers K to 8 around literacy that we're just actually in the process of releasing to our schools in the next couple of weeks. We're actually introducing it tomorrow to our elementary admin, and we'll be then providing it to every single teacher in the district. It aligns with the balanced numeracy guide, so the two documents now are aligned. It aligns directly with our framework for teaching and learning. So when we're talking about teaching and learning with our classroom teachers, there's references to the balanced literacy guide, so there's alignment there. And it's also gone to a more, I'll use the word small b balanced literacy approach, where we've incorporated a lot of the work around phonics and phonemic awareness, in addition to the balanced literacy approach that we've been kind of pushing over the last few years in response to a desire from the field to have everything in there. And so our work will be to provide supports and elaborations for classroom teachers, because although our results are good and they're improving, not 100% of our students are actually reaching their literacy goal. And so that's our goal, and our hope is that this guide and the support around it will help us get all of those students, especially those students in some of those groups that are not at the highest level, like our other students, will be able to improve their literacy results. The second thing that we are undertaking is we have a K-12 literacy team that is working this year, and it is part of work that we've been tasked to do between my department, Instructional Services, Learning Support, and Aboriginal. And why that's important is that in the past, what we've noticed is in Instructional Services is we have been working on literacy over here, and Learning Support, our SLPs and our school psychologists sometimes have been working on working on literacy over here. And in some cases in previous years, we actually realized that we were actually working in the same school on the same things, but actually not working together. So part of the purpose of this team is recognizing that when we talk about improving literacy for kids, we're not talking about just identified kids. We're not talking about just Aboriginal kids. We're talking about all kids. And so when we talk about literacy, we need to do it together. So our three departments are coming together, and we've created this literacy team who is going to be working on defining what does it actually mean to be literate at every grade group. How are we assessing that consistently across the district? So when we get results back that we know that at every school, whatever grade it is, that all our students are being assessed the same way when it comes to their literacy results. And then what are the actual interventions and strategies that we should be using at each level to support all of our students who aren't reaching their goals, so that all students, whoever those students are actually reaching their literacy goals, which then goes back to our stated literacy goal. So that team will be undertaking that work this year and then bringing that back to our schools so they can implement them and try to improve our literacy results for all students. Numeracy, very similar. Again, pretty much the same goal. Again, using the same types of assessments, different assessments to assess the different areas and triangulate that data. So what are we seeing around numeracy? Again, continued improvement. We're seeing improved results when it comes to all of our district numeracy results. So we have district numeracy assessments at grade 3, 6, and 9, and those results are improving. We've seen improved numeracy results on our FSA at grade 7. Not so much at grade 4, so we have some questions around that. And then very similar, Aboriginal students, students with diverse abilities, children and youth in care, their results are also increasing, but again, not at the same level as all of our other students, or they're still a little bit lower. So again, lots of questions for us in terms of what we need to do in those areas. So what are we doing around that? This is really building on the work we started last year. So again, the use of the balanced numeracy guide, providing a consistent guide for every single classroom teacher to help them with their numeracy instruction. We feel that's going to have a huge impact, so there's consistency across the system. And then our work this year is actually providing more of those instructional supports for classroom teachers, the resources that actually help them along with the guide so that they can improve numeracy instruction for all of our kids. And then specifically, those are 3 areas that we've identified that students tend to struggle the most in. And so we're putting most of our efforts into number sense, problem solving, and conceptual understanding. And then the third area is human and social development, which we've actually ironically talked a lot about already tonight and from the previous section. So I might be able to tie some things into there. So our 2 goals there, we have 2 goals there. Number 1 is that all students and staff feel welcome, safe, and connected to their school. And then the second goal is to actually promote the mental health in school strategy through embedding positive mental health in all aspects of the education system, including culture, leadership, curriculum, and learning environments. We were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier this evening. So in regards to those two goals, when I refer to the student results, survey results, the first set is for students. So what we are seeing through the surveys that we do with students, and we do multiple surveys, whether it be the Tell Them From Me survey or the MDI survey or the Ministry Learning survey, our students are continuing to say that we are seeing consistent results around their feeling safe, welcome, and a sense of belonging. And those results are consistently at or slightly above provincial averages. Having said that, very similar in line with those specific categories of students. Their averages are in line with the provincial averages, but again, they continue to be lower than some of the other groups of students within our district. So that's an area of concern for us. And then, as we've already talked about, we have received the staff results from the Guarding Minds survey, and through our work that Healthy Staff, Healthy Schools is doing, we are digging further into that and working towards the actions that will come out of that throughout this course of the year, which was addressed a little bit earlier. So a couple of actions, and again, this kind of ties back to some of the things that were already mentioned in the previous presentation. So we do have an advisory committee, and one of the things that we're doing as part of our work that Mr. Bradford mentioned is we are actually reviewing everything in the ministry mental health and school strategy to actually determine what areas we are doing well in and what areas we do need to do further work, because there are different aspects of it, some of which we've touched on, but there's other things in my department. So for example, around mental health literacy for students that we need to do some more work on. So that's part of the work that we're undertaking this year, and we'll be taking some actions towards that. And then we've already talked about the Ukuru training in terms of the implementation of that over the next couple of years. And that speaks directly back to, having gone through it myself, speaks directly back to our students feeling welcome and safe, and directly back to the presentation you had earlier from Mr. Pugh, because by having all of our staff trained in that, the impact of those students walking into the building and be able to breathe, we think that that will have an impact in improving results, those results of how students feel about welcome and belonging for all of our students. And specifically when you think of trauma for a lot of those groups that are a little bit lower than some of the other students in our district. So we're hoping that's going to have a really positive impact. And then the other piece I mentioned in there is also the work we're doing with district staff around anti-racism as part of that goal as well. So those are, again, just a few of the actions that we're taking in that particular area under human and social development. And then the last piece is that, in addition, is if you've looked at the document, we are adding in the operational plans from human resources and from IT and from finance, and those will be included in the document as well when it goes to the ministry by the end of the month. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you very much. It's time for questions. So I've got two trustees that would like to speak, and maybe there'll be more. First of all, I'd like to have David Todd and then Suzanne Perot. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering many questions and going through the framework itself. I've done some reading on this recently because in the States, there was a very important study that came out, like kind of the impact of the pandemic. And Time magazine talks about, we just had the best snapshot yet of how much progress students lost during the pandemic. So it's kind of topical because we're talking about student learning. And I know it's a cautionary tale. We can't compare the American public school system with what happens in Canada, and certainly not in BC, because we know in terms, I believe in North America, the BC school system actually remained open longer than many other jurisdictions. But what they found was it was almost an historic collapse in reading scores and math scores during this time. And they found especially the impact was on students that were vulnerable. In many areas, it was the Black students that they hadn't seen incidents of this in the last 50 years where their scores. Now, I know our data doesn't necessarily pick that up, but obviously, just from a rational level, we have to assume there's been some kind of learning loss or or learning interrupted as a result of the pandemic. I guess I wonder maybe your opinion. I know that we did some work around summer school. We kind of targeted that thing, but if you see it as a major area of concern. Thank you.
We can tag team this one. Sure. So yes, so I would say, and I would argue that we kept schools open in Langley, but a testament to all our staff members, we never took the foot off the pedal. So we found innovative ways to provide learning opportunities and access for all students to be successful. From our IT department deploying technology into the field so families that didn't have access would have access to it, to instructional services, learning support services, Aboriginal education, looking at the foundational needs of families. So making sure those needs were met first, and then providing the support online through the work that we did with our teachers and our support staff to ensure, again, that students were receiving instruction, even if it was in a virtual environment, they were still receiving it. We opened a whole school under a virtual environment so that we could have K-8 still remain when families didn't feel comfortable coming back into the buildings. Langley continued to push the envelope on excellence in terms of what we were doing. And again, that's a credit to the staff we have in the field and the work they did day to day to make sure that we were opening those doors for families and students. So yes, there was barriers, and yes, those barriers are going to have long-term impacts on families for sure, and for students. And in Langley, we will continue to try and provide access points for families to deal with the trauma that they dealt with over the last 2 years, because there's lots of things going on for them that were just basic needs that needed to be met. In terms of literacy and numeracy, I think this district did a fantastic job of meeting the call of what needed to happen, but it didn't go without a tremendous team effort. So it's great work within the district that's going on here specifically, and I think it's acknowledgement of what we do in Langley to serve our students.
Good job. I think you covered it well. Yeah. Trustee Pearl, I think you had another question at this point.
Awesome, thank you. Through the chair, I'm not sure where this is going to land, so forgive me. George, first I want to front load by saying thank you very much for your heart and your passion, and a very thorough presentation with some really rich and deep insights. It was really important that you not only highlighted what we're doing well, but you kind of dove into where you felt our stretches were, and I really appreciate that. We talk a lot in our district about equity and culture, and it's really important to me as a parent with children with disabilities, as an advocate, as a person with disabilities, that we use the word disabilities, not diverse abilities. It's really important that we recognize the importance of the culture for our students to feel safe in the classroom, our parents to feel safe coming in to advocate, that we recognize that neurodivergent brain is a critical part of the conversation, and that it is supported adequately, and that we're being cognizant of the approach of elevating all students on, assess all students in the same way. I can't be assessed on the same way. It's impossible because I don't think the same way. My husband yesterday showed me a blueprint of some work he was doing. I cannot see the pictures that he's drawing. I can't see it. I literally can't see these 3D images. It makes no sense to me. I got great thoughts and words. So it's really important when we think about culture and how it shows up in different ways. And in the disabilities community, language is a very important component. And so I want to front load with that. To be sure that we're being mindful of how we're moving through that, because I think that impacts how we institute and could be instituting supports through our educational assistants into the classrooms, how we review IEPs and look at the psych ed assessments and the diagnoses that are coming in, and any shifts that the ministry might be providing that we've been kind of blindfolded in the last year and a half through the special guidelines policy manual. There's lots of moving parts there. And I think as a district, as you said, Woody, we need to keep pushing on excellence. And this is one of those pieces and components that's really important. Keep our ear close to the ground too. So with that front load being said, when we talk about delivering with interventions on literacy, and we talk about the various interventions, when I think about students with disabilities and developmental disabilities in my work, and not only with my children, but what I've done not only locally, provincially, and nationally, there's pieces that we're chronically missing in the system accessing approaches such as Orton Gillingham. So I'm interested in understanding what are some of the best intervention strategies that we're talking about, and how do we plan on shifting it up when things like phonics and word families and sight words and all those things fail. Our students with developmental disabilities with that delayed executive function that aren't picking up on those approaches, and therefore aren't meeting or even getting close to be able to exceed expectations that we set out in the IEPs and or those rubrics that we have.
I mean, so I can't, I'm not the, like, I'll be the first to admit to you, I'm not the expert. That's not my department. That's more Michael Morgan's department. But what I can tell you is that what you're getting at is actually why we have put that district literacy team together. Because on that team, we have people in our district who are experts in that area. We have school psychologists, we have speech and language pathologists, and that is actually the goal, is actually bringing those people together to actually have those conversations and come up with a plan to make sure that we do have access to all of the types of interventions for all the different students in our district. And but also working together with my department, which are more the literacy experts, to support the literacy piece in terms of helping the instructional piece, and to also develop for classroom teachers how they can actually take all that information and design universally for all students so that all students can be successful. So that's actually the exact reason why we've created that team or put that team together, because we realized we there's a bit of a miss on that. We maybe aren't having or using all of the best strategies, or haven't researched all of the best strategies that we can use to actually improve those results for students. So that's actually their work. So I don't have all the answers to it, but the goal is through that process, they're going to actually arrive at a better understanding of this is what we should actually be using for these students, and this is what we should be using for these students. And I can tell you that there are some brilliantly talented people who are working in our schools right now with kids with disabilities who are going to be on that team, who are going to bring those ideas forward with the hope that it'll actually improve learning for all of our kids.
Thank you. Other trustees' comments? My only comment is we improved during a pandemic. Wow, look at those numbers, and numbers don't lie. That's just fabulous. So I just pat you guys on the back and our staff. This is a great news story. Okay, we've asked, I'll ask a question that the Board of Education receives the report on the framework for enhanced student learning for information as presented. All those in favor, please. All those in favor? Yes, unanimous. There we go. Thank you very much. On to the Secretary Treasurer's reports, 8.1, the right of way of Langley Secondary School. Thank you. Would you like to take this away, Secretary Treasurer?
Thank you, Chair. Just some information in your package, but wanted to just highlight some work that has happened over the summer. The township approached us late in June after we'd had our last board meeting, looking for a right-of-way in front of Langley Senior Secondary to do a bit of a road widening project. So to allow them to go ahead, staff worked with them on a license to occupy that space with a proposal coming from staff, which is in front of you tonight, to grant the right of way for them so that they could have access to that piece of property. For that license, they did pay just under $65,000 to the district for that. In addition to that, we had made some requests to change the program. They were able to add a sidewalk into the plan in front of LSS, and to move the bus stop from the other side of the road to the LSS side of the road. So that was also taken into account when district settled on the $64,000 for the fee. So before you is a right-of-way bylaw for the township for that piece of property. And if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Question? Okay, no questions? Any other questions? Okay, well, let's just get it on the table first of all, and I'll bring it over to you. Moved by, please, Tony Ward, thank you. Seconded by Charlie Fox, thank you. All right, questions, Tony Ward. And then
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Secretary Treasurer. Just with respect to, I mean, this is pretty standard stuff, I guess, but speaking to the overall design and that kind of thing with the sidewalk, we really don't really have much to offer from the board's standpoint. It's just a right of way, basically. I'm looking at the drawing. It looks like there's a little bit of constriction with respect to 213A Street. I don't know if we speak to any of the considerations with respect to students walking to and from school or traffic coming and going, or how that's going to impact our students.
So the facility staff have worked through with township staff and have provided feedback, and township has incorporated, like I said, some changes with the sidewalk and I think the big one being the bus stop now on our side of the road instead of where it currently sits, where kids are running across that street. The right of way basically is just giving them access so that they will maintain that. The license already enables them to do that, but the township, as usual, does prefer to have a statutory right of way, which is of the norm. The reason that we charge for this statutory right of way, unlike in previous ones, is because there was a benefit to them and not to us, basically, for that. Normally it's part of a development where we really have no choice. So that's why we were able to get some funds from township for this, in addition to the improvements that they've incorporated into the plan.
thank you very much. Do you have other questions? Go ahead.
Okay, further question would be with respect to the sidewalk being on property now. And liability, I read through it as far as the disclaimer, I forget what it's called in legal terms, but if the concrete ever heaves or any of that kind of thing, or snow removal during winter or freeze thaws or anything like that, it's usually the responsibility of the property owner adjacent to based on township bylaw. Now it's on our side anyhow, but are they going to, if it breaks, do they fix it, or is it 100% our responsibility?
With the statutory right of way and with the agreement that we have even in the license, it's their responsibility to fix.
This is exciting. And Suzanne Perot, Trustee Perot.
This is exciting. Actually, you're right, Trustee Ross, and that's what I wanted to say. I'm very thankful for the work that you're doing, Secretary Treasurer. You know, this is something I've been chattering about for a while in the background, and to see this come to the foreground really excites me for student safety. And I just want to extend my great appreciation to everyone involved working on this project, because it's really critical. On a side note, we see lots of construction, not some construction going on in CLA parking lot right now. And I drive that path every morning early, and our students have minimal walking space, and it's not very safe on the road. Is there anything we can do to create a little bit more of a safety path at all in communication with the township or whomever the contractors are there? Just right in front of the church, there's just a small stretch there that the kids are kind of diverted onto the road. And so that always leaves me room for pause when people are not heeding the speed limit for that school, and puts kids at risk.
I can't answer that right now, but I'll have facility staff check in with township.
Perfect. Thank you.
Last comments from trustees. My only comment on this is, in all my years of being a trustee, I don't think we've ever been paid for a statutory right of way. This is actually the first. So I really applaud you, and I'm so pleased. So yeah, hard bargainer. Yeah, yeah. Fair market value. Anyway, so thank you again. This is great. 65,000. I mean, in the big scheme of things, I know it's only 65,000 in the almost $300 million budget, but wow. I'm just really pleased. So thank you very much. Okay. All those in favor of Board of Education, School District number 35, Langley, Langley Secondary Road Widening Right-of-Way Bylaw 2022 be given first reading? Okay, all those in favor, and it's carried unanimously. Okay. I need a mover and a seconder because there are all of these tonight. Mover by Tony Ward, seconded by David Todd. That the Board of Education School District number 35 Langley, Langley Secondary Road Widening Right-of-Way Bylaw 2022 be given second reading. All those in favor? And it carries unanimously. Thank you. And third reading, or pardon me, for all. This is a motion for all three readings tonight. It's got to be unanimous or it won't pass. Okay, so moved by Suzanne Perot and seconded by Marnie Wilson. Thank you very much. The Board of Education School District number 35 approves having all three readings of Langley Secondary Road Widening Right-of-Way Bylaw 2022 at tonight's meeting. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the last one, I need a mover for a seconder, please. Charlie Fox, seconded by Suzanne Perot. That the Board of Education, School District number 35, Langley Secondary Road Widening Right-of-Way Bylaw 2022 be given third reading, passed and adopted on the 20th day of September 2022. All those in favor? And it carries unanimously. Again, thank you very much. On to 8.2, the 5-year capital plan. Now, Secretary Treasurer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Trustees will recall that at the June meeting, we approved the first component of the capital plan submission. Oops, this is the wrong PowerPoint, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Of first portion of the 5-year capital plan. And at the June public meeting tonight before you is the other component, which is required to be submitted to the ministry by September 30th. Which is consistent of what they consider the minor capital portion of that. They have now gone to a two-phased approach, whereas it all used to be due in June, now major in June and minor in September. The big project here is window replacement and doors at Aldergrove Secondary. Trustees will recall we've done similar projects at 3 other secondary schools. This is a larger project and doors are included, which the others were just pure window projects. The costs of these projects have gone up exponentially. If you recall, we've usually done these in 2, sometimes 3 phases, and have been able to allocate other funds in our ask for things. But the project for this is thought to be closer to $3 million, so thought we would try and do it over 2 years. We are able to hopefully ask for it under 2 funding sources. Under the school enhancement project, you can see an ask of 1.1 million, and under the carbon neutral capital program, due to the energy savings from all the windows and doors, we would also qualify for funding there for the remaining $400,000, with the hope that the second phase would be done in the next capital plan submission. We are allowed to request 3 university accessible playgrounds. You can see the schools there, Simons, Noah Booth, and Glenwood. And if trustees recall, last year we did put in a request for 2 wheelchair bus replacements. Only were approved with 1. So asking again for the second one. That second one only qualified out of 1 of the 2 categories, which normally it still can be funded, but I guess there was too many asks for buses last year, so they only funded the 1 bus. The bus now that we're asking for qualifies under both categories, so I would hope that it would be replaced in the next response letter. So that's what is before trustees tonight, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. First of all, David Todd, and seconded by Suzanne Perot, and I got a speakers list here. So first off is Charlie Fox. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Wheelchair bus, is this going to be an electric bus? We've had such success with electric buses so far, supply chain plus charging and so on. I just wanted to know if this was going to be another headache.
No, the plan is not to do a wheelchair bus due to supply chain issues. We only received our buses that we ordered 18 months, 2 years ago. This summer, they are hoping to be getting those on the road in the next week or so, I believe. They've had a few hiccups with some of the charging, but that's all been sorted out. The district would like to have some experience running the two that we have before we commit to purchase any additional buses. So I think it'll be next capital plan before we would even think about doing any other electric buses.
Thank you. And now David Todd, your comment, please.
Thank you. Through the chair to Secretary Treasurer Isley. So I'm excited about the retrofit on the doors and windows at Aldergrove. And do we know approximately what kind of energy saving? Like, is it 10, 15%? Because I know windows and doors are often like a huge loss of heating within the building.
That work is still being undertaken as to what those actually were, depending on what we can accomplish through the project.
Final questions? I have one question, and all our buses look so new to me. Just to give me context and for the public, how old is this particular bus? Do you have any idea?
I'm trying to recall. I believe it's 10 years or a certain mileage. So last year it only had the years. This year it has the years and the mileage that they require before they will consider replacing it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor, in accordance with provisions under section 142, subsection 4 of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley hereby approves the proposed 5-year capital plan, minor capital programs for 2023/2024, as provided in the attached minor 5-year capital plan. All those in favor, please. And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Great. Okay, over to the audit committee, and I get to pass this over to someone else to cover off. So would the chair of the audit committee like to carry on with the next section, please?
Say it again. This is one of the most exciting parts of the meeting. I only have 14 motions to go through here. So I'll just turn it over briefly to Secretary Treasurer Isley. Do you have some slides you wanted to present?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Fox. The audit committee met with our auditors earlier this month, and staff met with the board at Finance and Facilities to go through the financial results, but did want to at least put up a couple slides for the public, just so they understand a few things, mainly just on the overall results. Just a reminder that when we do our financial statements, it's for all the funds that are the responsibility of the school district, being the operating, special purpose, and capital funds. You can see the total revenue there of just under $331 million total. The largest fund is our operating fund. That's where the day-to-day operations are mainly done. You can see that we finished the year in a $2.8 million deficit. We did have a planned deficit, but not, we were better than what we thought, and the surplus money will be shown on the next slide with the proposal, which is in the motions that will be before you tonight. We also have our special purpose fund. The most of that is made up of the classroom enhancement fund, which was from the restored teacher contract. And then the capital, the majority of the large amounts at the top there was the site acquisition that the district was made this year for a joint middle secondary site. So you can see kind of where the bulk of those funds are in operating. The bulk of the $229 million that we spend in operating, $194 million of that was in instruction. On the accumulated surplus, I'm going to spend mainly the time talking about our operating surpluses, which is the detailed list there. Trustees had restricted just over $770,000 to balance the 22-23 preliminary budget this past June. We've also are proposing setting up a restricted future amount of just under $2.5 million to balance budgets as we work to get back to a balanced budget structure. As you can see, we're getting closer, but wanted to have some funds there to be able to do that over the next little while. We'll continue with $107,000 in infrastructure replacements. That's for things like those buses. The work that we did in Aldergrove came from last year. That was a $1 million fund a couple years ago, and it's down to 107,000. With the growth in the district, proposing setting up an addition $1 million to the student capacity to put that to $1.5 million, as we're going to start needing to buy a lot of portables in this district over the next number of years until schools are approved and then built. The school generated funds, those are the school bank accounts that are required to be reported under operating, but those aren't funds that the board uses. So that's $2.6 million. School surpluses, that's from their operating budget that we allow them to carry over to the following school year, just over $421,000. Our Aboriginal Indigenous education funds, those are targeted funds that have to be spent in that area. Those funds weren't completely spent in 21-22, so those have to be carried over and will be spent in the subsequent school year. Supply chain, obviously, I mentioned that with the buses and the various other things caused issues this year. So we had just over $1.2 million of stuff that should have, or hopefully would have been here for June or as part of the June budget, but did not arrive. So that money is being set aside. So when they arrive, we have the funds for them. We still have $283,000 left in the COVID contingency fund. Trustees will recall that started as a $5 million fund a year and a half or so ago. We are down to that last $283,000, and staff will be proposing using that for utility bills to continue to run the HVAC in the same manner that we have over the last year or so. Classroom furniture, that's mainly to replace, or sorry, to provide furniture for all those portables that we're going to be needing to buy. And as trustees will recall, we've started a projector replacement so we like to set aside $750,000 for that. And this last June, we started a fund for future capital contributions. Trustees will recall when PEM's Peter Ewart Middle seismic and expansion was announced, that there was a $1 million contribution required from the district. So with that restriction, we would have $630,000 of that $1 million set aside for that project. In addition to that, per the board policy, we have an unrestricted amount, and that amount used to be at $4 million. So that all adds up to our accumulated operating surplus of just over $15 million. And with that, I will answer questions or hand it over to Trustee Fox for.
Any questions? Okay.
Oh, actually, I have.
Oh my, sorry. All of a sudden. Chair Ross.
Just to give some context, we've just gone through COVID. Oh, sorry. We've just gone through COVID. We've come to understand we've got to run our HVAC at a higher level now. And what are the things and the costs that we expect are going to have to carry on for the long term that we didn't have previously, but now we've sort of inherited just because it's kind of the way we do business now?
For the HVAC, the estimate that I received from our utility manager for this year is about $412,000 in additional utility costs to run the HVAC at the recommended levels. So if that was to be a continued recommendation going forward for schools, it would be in that neighborhood, give or take, as utility rates change.
Trustee Wilson? Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none? Can we move along then to our 9.1, which is the approval of the audited 2021-2022 financial statements. That the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley approves the 2021-2022 audited financial statements and requests staff to submit them to the Ministry of Education. Mover, Perot, seconder Ross. Trustee Ross, all those in favor? Carried. 9.2, that the Board of Education of School District number 35 Langley approves the financial statement discussion and analysis, FSD and A, be included with the 2021-2022 financial statements. Can I have a mover? Trustee Ross, trustee Ward. Could I second? All those in favor? Carried. 9.3. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $2,489,351 to balance future budgets as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Can I have a mover? Trustee Todd, trustee Perot, seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Are you getting the movers and seconders? You're okay? I don't have to. Okay, thank you. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $107,804 for infrastructure replacement as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Mover? Trustee Wilson, trustee Ross, second. All those in favor? Carried. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $1,500,000 for student capacity needs as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statement. Move trustee Perot, seconded trustee Todd. All those in favor? Carried. The Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $2,622,054 for school generated funds. For the school generated funds balance that hasn't been spent and now is part of the operating surplus due to PSAB as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Can I have a mover? Trustee Todd, trustee Ward. All those in favor? Carried. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted school operating fund surpluses of $421,322 from 2021 to 2022 be carried forward to 2022-2023 for schools as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. A mover, trustee Ross, trustee Wilson. Seconds. All those in favor? Carried. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $167,804 for Indigenous education as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Can I have a mover? Trustee Todd, seconder, trustee Wilson. All those in favor? Carried. The Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $1,233,788 for commitments from the 2021-2022 as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Mover, trustee Ross, seconder, trustee Todd. Did you second that? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Carried. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $283,393 for COVID-19 contingency as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. I have a mover, trustee Todd, trustee Ross. All those in favor? Carried. We're getting there. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $250,000 for classroom furniture as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Could I have a mover, please? Trustee Ross, trustee Wilson. All those in favor? Carried. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the internally restricted surplus of $750,000 for projector replacements as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Trustee Perot moves. Is there a seconder? Trustee Ward. All those in favor? Carried. that the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the restricted surplus of $630,919 for future district capital contributions as described in Note 12 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Moved trustee Todd, seconded trustee Wilson. All those in favor? Carry. 9.4, interfund transfers. That the Board of Education of School District Number 35 Langley approves the transfer of $443,540 for the Special Purpose Fund and $5,666,140 from the Operating Fund to the Capital Fund as described in Note 13 of the 2021-2022 audited financial statements. Do I have a mover? Trustee Ward, trustee Ross, Chair Ross. Seconds, all those in favor?
Question.
Yes.
I just need to clarify. Moving, but certain, like my interest, maybe the Secretary Turgeon can give us a little bit of background.
Sure.
So the district doesn't have local capital anymore, so any capital items that are purchased have to be funded from the other funds, bulk of it coming from operating and a little bit coming from special purpose funds.
Okay. Call the question then. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Just before I turn it back to you, Chair Ross, I just wanted to make mention, as the chair of the audit committee, we did have the opportunity to meet directly with the auditors as trustees. And I have to report that our auditors were incredibly impressed with the cooperation of our finance team. Shenda's over here, Secretary Husley. They were described it as a super clean audit. All the materials were supplied on time and as expected, and the finance principles and practices that are exhibited in our school district are in good hands, as they described it to myself and the audit committee. So thank you to our staff for doing an excellent job providing all the information, and you got a clean bill of health. Thank you. Back to you.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to number 11, which is trustee comments. So what I thought I'd do is let, new business. Oh, do we have any new business? Oh, I didn't have anything under new business. Does anyone have any new business? No, but that's good. You gotta ask. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't have anything written there, so, okay, thank you. Over to number 11, trustee comments. And so what I thought I'd do is we'll go this way and we'll save the best for last, which of course will be Dave and Todd, and we'll let Shelley be the final word tonight. So trustee comments. So Dave, Mr. Ward, would you like to start out, please?
I just want to say very, very simply, I just want to thank David and Shelley. It's been quite a massive learning experience from the wisdom of the two of you. And I really do appreciate it. And you're going to, as you know, you're going to be deeply missed. And you'll be in tears in about three seconds. So anyhow, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now on to trustee Marnie Wilson. Would you?
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, yes.
Gonna
Hope you got a moment there.
write something down. There we go. Okay, I just wanted to also have a few comments about trustee Todd and trustee Coburn. Trustee Todd, thank you for your compassionate and gentle manner on this board. It has been appreciated, and your work with the LGBTQ2+ community, your rainbow crosswalk, traffic safety, always top of mind, seatbelts on buses and electric buses. And so I thank you for your service and wish you all the best in your future. Trustee Coburn, that I know isn't going to cry. Thank you for always advocating for any, especially marginalized groups. Your work on overdose awareness has been tireless, raising money to buy Christmas presents for youth in care, collecting and painting chairs for a very powerful overdose awareness event. You're always taking on more projects. It's made me realize why you're always late for everything. It's just that you have so much to do. That's what it is. So she's just doing a lot. And I want to thank you for your advocacy and your integrity and your commitment to your work. You will be missed. On to things in the community. We had a tour that you guys heard about of ACSS and Betty Gilbert. We got to go through the accessible playground or parkour obstacle course, whatever we're calling it. It was very impressive. I was given a totems shirt and now I feel like a totem. So that's a challenge to have other schools have me on a tour. I'm available. It was just really nice to get back out in the community because we all know COVID kept us out of schools for a long time. So that felt great. The provincial childcare working group that I was asked to sit on as a representative of the BCSTA has met a couple times over the summer. I want to thank the partner groups who provided some feedback and some valuable questions for me to take forward to that committee. They're working on they're very cognizant of figuring out a plan so that things will roll out smoothly instead of trying to put out a bunch of fires after the fact, which I feel is a good thing. We've stressed that this needs to be fully funded. Education cannot take on funding something else, so that funding needs to come with it. They've been very thoughtful conversations on districts offering the dual credit ECE programs and helping to fill the shortage of ECEs out there, supporting third-party providers in a very positive way so that, you know, nobody's worried about losing anything. Creating job opportunities for current school district employees is also top of mind. And so that work has been going on. Also really working with Indigenous communities has been a big priority for the group. So I'm excited about that group. And lastly, I also want to make sure people get out and do something on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Like we heard tonight in the presentation, there's always more that you can learn, and we need to just be constantly improving ourselves and striving to become better human beings. So please get out and do something on that day that helps with reconciliation. And lastly, I just want to talk about that I've learned a lot in my 4 years on this board. I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had and proud of our board's accomplishments. And I want to thank parents, students, and staff for all you do for this district because I truly appreciate you.
Thank you, Trustee Marnie Wilson. And now on to Trustee Perot. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to be a little more verbose. It's my gift. Trustee Colburn concedes with that. First though, I've never prepared notes before for my trustee comments. Today I did to keep myself on track so I can get you guys home. But before I start, I just wanted to really acknowledge Natasha Gabriel for making this beautiful design on this shirt. It's an incredible piece of work that she's done. It's about a feather morphing into birds. It's an image she says that she's always loved. She added Coast Salish shapes here that are moving into the birds moving away. And she says our people are still dealing with the effects of residential schools and what they have done. We mean it when we say every child matters. And so on Truth and Reconciliation Day, I echo what Trustee Wilson says, that let's keep doing our own personal journey. It's super important. That being said, again, I have never prepared a full script response in a fulsome manner for my comments. However, today's been the last day in our role at this public table, and I have departing thoughts I'd like to share. But first, I want to extend my apologies for missing the last board meeting before summer because my father-in-law was passing and I needed to eject, and so I recognize it was a really important meeting, and my apologies. But before moving forward with the multitude of acknowledgements of our success, I must recognize it cannot be successes without overcoming the significant stretches and the hurdles and observing the importance of reconciliation relationships in this board. This first half of our term was very tumultuous. Although we succeeded at accomplishing important work, many of you are aware that there were very many great distractions that were levied weight upon our leadership and on one another within this board. None of us is without a boulder that we placed on this to create pressure. However, my role is to speak to my journey, to my impact, and to my ownership. There have been times when I lacked wisdom and I had not sought a fulsome counsel to gain insight on decisions leading to actions or cross-checking thoughts that have been made, and I apologize for that to my fellow board members who were impacted as a result of our leadership. And I apologize to our leadership team. And I apologize to our partner groups and our stakeholders. And I can't see. Marnie, this is when you usually come in to the rescue with your tissue. Thank you. It's important that trustees operate out of the spirit of collaboration, and there's a bigger picture before us, and it's children and the future. The distraction of this board, the tension that was created, and the breakdown of relationship internally and externally in the community needs to be acknowledged and spoken to. As trustees, our job is to protect the best interests of children, to inspire all learners, to reach their full potential and create a positive legacy for the future. Coming into the role of a public servant, into public service, one could get caught in the dynamics that feed the best interests of the person, position, or vision versus the interest of the whole. Our board got lost in that in the first half of the term. I got lost, and I apologize. Over 18 months, we've witnessed incredible healing and tremendous growth and collaboration moving this district forward. This is a byproduct of independent trustees working towards the greater vision and mission of this district as a whole. Having independent trustees come to the table, each with their gifts, abilities, and talents to offer over time to serve, is vital to the health and well-being of every single student, every staff member, every community partner that this district walks alongside. We have a responsibility to walk humbly with a good heart and good mind, seeking the best interests of the whole, ensuring we are supporting students socially, emotionally, while building into and souling our schools. When we recognize that each of us are far from perfect, and when our well-being or our circumstances can be altered and therefore move us into a place of suffering, we recognize the importance of the individual and the power as a strong community collective. When we walk towards a greater vision and mission of this district, we yield ourselves to ensuring and supporting students to succeed. Some may ask, what does it mean to ensoul our schools? Kevin LaRue spoke about that today. I did not know that was coming, but I'm going to speak to it. In short, it's birthing forth the gifts, abilities, and passions of our students with their talents so that they can move in a way that they have been called. It starts with our hearts and their hearts so that their minds can follow. When we capture students' heart, we capture their mind, and therefore we've created a trust relationship that will follow. The public school system not only exists to educate children, but it's a safe haven and it saves lives. There are hundreds of children every day in this school district that are like me, who entered a new school as a beginning in grade 4, and I registered myself alone. Students that enter into our school district seeking connection, they're looking for safe spaces and adults so they can rise up into adulthood intact. When we come together as individual and independent trustees, we model the importance of independent thinking, of safety, of collaboration, and therefore co-regulation, which we talk about in our trauma-informed practices, leading us towards self-regulation. It starts at the top. We've seen the importance of collaboration with our community partners, the ministry, and our stakeholders while strengthening our leadership team. As a board, we have advocated, we have worked on policy, created safe spaces with earthquake preparedness, readiness, and made safer schools, having calm rooms and sensory rooms versus seclusion rooms. We've moved the compass heavily towards equity, diversity, and inclusion while navigating the important conversations of our staff and their wellness while examining equity scans. Seating ourselves in the cushion of trauma-informed practices, my heart passion is the greater work. In that, I want to thank and congratulate this board for pushing forward on the hard work to succeed upholding these targets that we had before us and wrestled through to get us to the closing term successfully. Some of you will be running again, and I'm excited to see you put your names forward for our district to serve in the best interest of the students. Trustee Colburn, I wish you strength, I wish you wisdom, and I wish you courage as you move forward into your council campaign that you'll surely succeed. And Trustee Todd, I want to extend my deep appreciation for your service and your dedication to our district, to our vulnerable students, allowing your voice to stand when needed. And I wish you both well in your future endeavors. To our leadership team, our staff, our partner groups, thank you for walking alongside us and allowing us to walk alongside you with courage. It's been an honor, and I look forward to the opportunity of possibly serving you again.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate that. And I mean, just your story, you know, I think that is so important. You know, it's a brand new school year. I think when we think about startup schools, the startup for the board, I think the very thing we should do is to sit around and just talk about our story and get to know each other a little bit more. So, I mean, going to stories you mentioned there, grade 4, registering yourself for school all by yourself alone. I mean, that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your words. Let's go on to Charlie Fox, please.
Well, thank you, Chair Ross, and thank you for your leadership as the board chair for the last year. It was 18 months ago that the voters of the Township of Langley gave me the opportunity to serve on this board of school trustees, and I sincerely thank them for that. Some of the folks were adamant when I was running that I was running for the short term, but I can assure you the people that knew me knew that I wasn't running for the short term. I'm running for the long term. This role has been rewarding, and I knew all along that if I found it to be that way, that I was going to run again, and I'm going to do that on this coming election. Having worked in the district for over 33 years and now as a year and a half as a trustee, and further worked within the district on many initiatives and projects since my arrival in this community 49 years ago. Holy smokes, you're not even 49 years old, are you? You're not? You weren't born when I started. Okay. This was a new opportunity for me to serve not only the education community, but more importantly, the students and families of the Township of Langley in the educational realm. What a rewarding experience it's been to work hand in hand with my 6 colleagues here and an amazing senior staff. Amazing senior staff, okay? I said that. I do say that in all sincerity. I can assure you tonight, for those that are in the audience and those in video, that our senior staff is second to none in this province of BC. You see the leadership and the presentations they give. You see the leadership each and every day in this district, and we're all focused on the same thing, and that is the betterment of student learning. I can say that working alongside my 6 board colleagues has been very productive and rewarding. Each of us on this board brings a different background. You can see that with us sitting at the table and hear it in their words tonight. And they bring a different perspective to discussions and debate, which I value immensely. We've worked together on issues and challenges in a respectful, collaborative, and productive manner for the betterment of this whole complete education system. And I can say unequivocally that when differences have arisen, we've worked through those in a consensus model. And the end result has been for the betterment of the employees, the students, and the district as a whole. We're not necessarily a collective voice, as we are each an independent voice. We respect each other's strengths, ideas, and diversities in our discussion, to make a collective, unified decision at the end, which we all support. I believe this is a great strength of this group of trustees, and I'd encourage voters and the public to consider that as we move forward. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of our district staff. This district employs some 3,300 individuals. We're the largest employer in the township and the city of Langley combined. I believe that each employee in this district comes to work daily to make a difference in the lives of students, whether it be learning or whether it be in other areas that they're responsible for. They come with a passion and a love for the job, and I've enjoyed the opportunity in my role to support that as a trustee. To the senior staff, your dedication, leadership, and commitment to this district has not gone unnoticed by me and by others. Some of you were former colleagues. Sorry, Woody, you were never one of those former colleagues, but you know, Mal, so on, we worked together. Yeah, you missed that opportunity. You can talk to Marcello. Anyway, this was a different role for me when working with you as former colleagues, and I've had to take a step back in some instances and take a different perspective on how that role works in relationship to my previous roles. I too was honored to be asked to represent the school district in the province of the BCSDA Audit and Finance Committee. I don't know if I have a real niche for this audit and finance stuff, but after 14 motions tonight, I'm starting to feel real comfortable with that. What are you laughing at? That's not funny. You know, they gave that to the new guy. They just thought, here's. Lastly, I just want to acknowledge that unlike some other governance bodies in the township, we're still meeting and doing the business of the people that elected us. And I'm proud of that. And we've got more work to do. We're not finished. We're going right through into October, and we're continuing with our committee work and so on. In conclusion, I've loved the work that I've been involved in the last 18 months. I've loved this district, and I've got passion for this district. And I think that passion breeds through my whole family. It's been a journey. And I want to acknowledge Trustee Colburn and Trustee Todd. The last 18 months have been a journey, but it's been a journey I've enjoyed. I've always enjoyed your perspectives. I've always enjoyed the discussion. And I've always enjoyed the fact that in every instance, we've put students first. And I think that's really key. And you've led that charge. And as you move forward into new roles, I know you're moving into a role in a district where you're going to make a difference and continue to make a difference with the teaching profession. You're moving into a new role of governance, hopefully, in the city. And again, making a difference, public service, and that's great. I wish you all the best in your journey. I've appreciated you sharing your wisdom and passion with myself and the district over the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Fox. And, you know, that audit committee is one of my personal favorites.
Don't speak too loud. You could end up.
You know, I really hadn't given a lot of thought, but you know, your comments tonight are really impactful in that I may not be invited back. So I guess this could be my last public meeting. So I think it would be prudent for me to sort of follow up a few kudos to staff because, you know, I too, I love this staff. I love this work we do. I love Langley. And, you know, you know, when people use the word love, you know, they didn't say I like. When they say love, really, really listen to what does that mean and listen behind it, what's behind that. And, you know, I love the work and, you know, it's certainly been a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And we've heard a little bit about it tonight, but, you know, there is a camaraderie on this team. We really are a team. And every team has different players, different positions, different roles. And but the whole goal is to win. And as a district, we are winning. And I am so pleased about the future. I am so optimistic about the future. We've got a great senior leadership team, We got great teachers, great support staff, and they show up every day giving their very best. And, you know, people can go to other districts. We most recently did a study where we were involved in, of course, this Metro thing, trying to get Langley into Metro. And one of the things that the government said to our senior staff, they said, well, you know, you guys are talking about, you know, you're losing people to Metro. Well, how many of you lost? Well, you know, to tell you the truth, it was really hard to answer that question because Langley is such a great district. People don't leave it. So I don't know if it was 2 or 3 over the last 5 years, but it was a real small number. Was it 2? Right. So, you know, they're not leaving. You know, they're pretty happy here. And so we're, you know, my whole thing, I always have wanting to be a world-class school district. And, you know, we are on the way to being a world-class school district. So thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, audience. And now my comments to our departing trustees, the dearly departed. No, you know, years ago, someone asked me a question. They said, you know, Rod, who are you? And I couldn't answer that question. And this person said to me, yeah, this is who you are. So today I'm going to tell you who you are. And you've actually heard it already today. But really, when it comes down to your core strength is compassion. Both of you. I mean, you guys are the criers. I'm disappointed when you leave. I'll be all alone. I'm a bit of a crier too. I can cry, but you guys are much better than I am. And so
Who's got the Kleenex?
So anyway, I just want to say that is your superpower, Shelley. David, use that every day. And you know, you're going to be hugely successful in whatever you put your hand to. So I applaud you, and I will miss you both. Okay. And so those are my comments, and now I'll leave it to you. David, Todd, would you like to make your final comments?
Life is a highway. Yeah. And everything's so surreal at this moment right now. Good evening. We recently received this book from our superintendent, Brene Brown, The Atlas of the Heart. And she summed it up, or they summed it up. If we want to find the way back to ourselves and one another, we need language and the grounded confidence to both tell our stories and be stewards of the stories that we hear. And this relates right through the First Peoples. This is the framework for meaningful connection. And in education, it's all about connection. It's all about connection. And connection, I've found, is the key to the work of a successful trustee. And I wish I was always really successful at doing it. I digress. As I reflect back upon my 8 wonderful years as a Langley School trustee, I'm intensely grateful and, dare I say, proud of the opportunity given to me by this community. I've appreciated working with 3 wonderful superintendents, Suzanne Hoffman, Gord Stewart, and now Mal Gill. (36 or 37, somewhere around that number), 37 years in education, and we have phenomenal educational leaders in Langley. Each one of them showed a tremendous passion for education and, once again, what's best for students in our district. Hats off to Secretary Treasurer, both David Green and Brian Isley, who kept the cupboard stocked. And I wrote this yesterday, actually breathed financial life into our operations. Learning takes time, patience. Former trustees Rob McFarland, Allison McVeigh, Rosemary Wallace, and Megan Dykeman, they all taught me so much about how to fulfill this job. I want to personally thank all our principals, our vice principals, our teachers, the tremendous teachers we have in Langley, our SEAs, super SEAs, admin support teams, maintenance, facilities, bus drivers, school caretakers, and the excluded staff that work in this district. It's incredible. And we see you. I've said this before, I'm a passionate supporter of public education. Didn't have much choice when you're from a family of 10. Public education offers our greatest hope for the future. Hard to believe, for 56 years, I'm dating myself, every September I've been in schools. Well, as long as you count university as a school. I was a privileged person, and I am privileged, and I had many benefits based on that privilege. And public education made a difference for me, and indeed my whole family. It offered a way out. There's no greater endeavor than the public education system. We need to cherish it and protect it. Now, that said, I wouldn't be a leader or a teacher if I didn't do some grading of my own performance. We talked tonight about our evaluation. So some of the things done well or a sense of accomplishment. The highlights for me, RC Garnet, the expansion. I remember my first campaign long time ago. I talked about we need to expand that school. The LSS decision, the consultation we started immediately, and the decision to rebuild. RE Mountain, the new RE Mountain opening. Peter Ewart repurposing. Donna Gabriel Robbins opening. And the recent upgrades to ACSS and Betty Gilbert. Our slow, intentional, deliberate journey towards truth and reconciliation with First Nations. Tonight, Luke has been trying to get me to say this, Waltall, which means forgiveness in Halkmeen. Our continued pursuit of inclusion and our respect for diversity. Going back to every student being safe in our schools, that breath. I enjoyed my committee work, the township liaison, parks recreation, and the profound influence that the LGBTQ plus community had upon me. And last but not least, people have mentioned the Rainbow Crosswalk adjacent to this building. I think I deserve a B. But I still have much to learn about communication and almost precaucusing and sometimes being a rush to do things and introducing motions kind of at the last moment. But I do want to reassure the board as a whole and each individual on the board that I just don't do it. It's not my thing to go to social media and second guess or rip apart other board members. No, that's not me. And you know, I look forward to a new board, and I wish them nothing but the best for this district. My hope for our district is embedded in our strategic plan, and I do see an incredibly bright future for this district and the students. My concerns, what keeps you up at night? The whole managing growth and I wrestle right now. We've got like 500 kids in our schools up there, and that's concerning to me. Sincere thanks to my supporters over the years, people that have helped campaign, put signs up with me, supported being a trustee, the financial portion. My wife and children, Deborah, my spouse, Alexa, Nathan, Sarah, and Christina. Family and family support and family, okay, we got this, is critical to having an engaged trustee. And I look forward to my time now being Bubba, grandpa, my wonderful grandkids. I leave the board table knowing the good work will continue. And I want to say this to each and every one of you. And Tony, you've now heard good news already. I wish you nothing but success in this election season. I know it's going to get silly out there. And Shelley, you make an excellent city councillor. I was very fortunate to be a trustee in the Langley School District. We're now cheering you on from the sidelines. As for me, moving closer to a full retirement, I look to the advice of Clint Eastwood. When I get up in the morning, I don't let the old man in. Thank you.
Excellent. Go ahead, Shelley.
First, I'd like to acknowledge this beautiful bag that Rod Ross left for me in my spot. It's a Bookish Cats. It's my favorite one is Romy, Meow, and Juliet. So it's all the classics with cat names. Wanted to share that with the community because I like cats. So, hello friends. Today is a good day. That's what I keep telling myself. First of all, I'll start off by what I did all weekend, which was go to the powwow, which was amazing. I don't know if you've ever been to a powwow. I highly recommend it. And of course, my standout moment was seeing all my people there. And of course they would be there because I've learned a lot, but one of the things that we excel at in this district throughout the province is our Aboriginal education. And our relationships that we have. And everything that we do is stemming from relationships. And that's part of what makes Langley the best school district in the province. And even though it's already been stated, I want to acknowledge that I am so honored to serve on the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo nations. So I really didn't have anything prepared. I think it's because I'm not ready to let go. I know it's time, but it doesn't mean that I'm not in love with all of this and all of you. And I know that the place I'm headed to is nothing like the place I'm leaving behind. So I'm basically winging it. I have a cold, I'm not crying. First of all, I'd like to thank Claire. I do want to thank Claire. I also hear that there's a bet out on how long it will take for Trustee Coburn to cry. I don't think it's going to be me. I've got my money on Woody, Alicia Rempel, and Marcello. Although the tears that Marcello might cry tonight are different than the tears he cried the night I first won all the way back in 2014. We've come a long way, Mr. Molino. And before I get too far down this road, I want to go all the way back to the beginning and say a quick thank you to one Cecilia Ricci, the stranger who had coffee with me and told me to do this and then turned into my very best friend. Suzanne Hoffman, the superintendent, who thought it's good to keep your enemies close, but keep your passionate, somewhat aggressive, angry parents even closer. Maybe encourage them to sit on the board where you can keep a watchful eye on them. And Andrea Lyon, for whatever reason, she's championed me and she still does. And her and I never agree. Those are always my favorite supporters. Okay, so what have I got here? There's nothing in this world quite like public education. Education is progressive. It is forward thinking. It is the champion of the underdog, the mechanism for upward social mobility. Education strives for better. It asks the same of you. It prepares the future for the future. It doesn't give up. It helps us achieve our potential or to realize that we are limitless and that we must always learn and to never stop growing. Education dares you to believe in and support others and then challenge you to do the same for yourself. Nowhere else will anybody celebrate you and your achievements like public education. In fact, if the whole world acted like we do in education, it would be a better place. If organizations and institutions cared and celebrated the people that we do, I think that everything would be in a lot better shape. So I find it super fitting that Mr. Pugh said that we take what we've learned and what has so graciously been shared with me and take it wherever it is we go, where I go, and leave the place better than when I found it. So I'm going to tell you what I've learned. I'm going to share what I'm taking with me. I've learned that the Langley School District is one of the best in the province. It is second to none. I've learned that principals write amazing jingles. I've learned that most people in education care deeply about children and families and the work that they do, and very few people get up in the morning and say, I do not want to do what's best for children and families. I've learned that there's an actual job in the role of politician, and it's one that I take very seriously, and I've discovered that I'm rather good at it. I have learned that little girls from Nickelmack will do big things. I've learned I'm stronger than I realized and braver than I ever imagined, and that courage comes at the worst times, but it comes at the right times. I've learned learning takes patience and time, and I'm pretty sure this falls under the things that I've taught others, because I'm sure it took a lot of patience and time for many of the staff to learn how to deal with me as I began the journey of growing up. I learned along the way that it is better to be gracious and kind than to be hard and demanding and impossible to please, because I was when I first arrived. I've learned that I have been given way more than I've ever given, and maybe more than I deserve at times. The things I never anticipated when I became a trustee, that I would do so much public crying. I hate crying, and that's all I've done for 8 years. I never anticipated that I would come to love Gord Stewart so much, or that last week on the way to Aldergrove, I would weep thinking about how much I would miss Brian. I never expected to at times feel forced to be more vulnerable than I've ever wanted to be, but in the end find myself in a place where it was safe to do so. I never anticipated that at the end of this 8-year journey, I would arrive to a place where I truly am the best version that I can be, and that I've come to be the person that I'm meant to be. And for all of this, I'm so grateful. And I say thank you. Thank you to the people who elected me. Thank you to the children and the families I have been so privileged to serve. Thank you to all of the staff in our district. And I mean this. I don't really want to bring up all of the pandemic nonsense, but I want you to know that I deeply believe that you dominated and that you knocked it out of the park. And I truly believe that all of you in our district and all of everybody in public education are the unsung heroes of the last 2 years and never got nearly enough credit while we all banged our pots and pans for nurses, and rightfully so. I think it's important to ask who was watching the nurses' children as the nurses went to work. It was never lost on me the tremendous risks that everybody took when they were forced to go into buildings with a disease, a virus that was so scary people wouldn't leave their houses. If I could give anything, it would be to give you way more credit than what was given to you by the public. I want to thank all the administrators who invited me into your buildings and invited me to share, to witness, and to participate. And before I turn to the people I worked most closely with, I need to say to my colleagues at the table, and to Candy Ashdown, and Tony, who will be trustees by acclamation, I'm watching you. I love my little city, and I take the role of city trustee very seriously. To my colleagues at the table, to this board, I have enjoyed this board immensely, which may surprise most of you. This new board. This board that wanted to have the fierce conversations so that we could be accountable to ourselves, to those we serve, to the public, and to each other. I respect you all, each, for the desire to work through the damage of a tough term so that we can leave in a good way, with good hearts and friendships and relationships and reputations intact. And maybe this is what's making it so hard to say goodbye. I could sit on this board forever, but I should not. I feel like my work is done and my skills and passions are best served elsewhere. All over the place. The people I work the most closely with at the DLT. I want you to know I acknowledge how difficult the last few years have been. COVID was tough. And the original mix, well, we didn't make it any easier. I want you to know I am aware of how hard this can be, how stressful it is. And I bet there were times when you wondered why you didn't leave, and I wondered the same. You didn't, and I am grateful. The leadership in this district is the glue that holds it all together. And then there were three: Mal, Brian, and Woody. The three I've been with. I want to thank you three especially. Because at the end of the day, before I was a parent, I was a trustee. Or before I was a trustee, I was a parent. And I want to thank you for doing what you would have done for any parent in the district at one of the worst, most challenging times in her life. You guys kept me safe. You wrapped me and my boys in services and supports that you would have given any parent, except it's more difficult when your parent is a trustee. And when I celebrate my sons making it through, and I celebrate one of them being alive, I celebrate all of you. Mal, you truly got the best of me. Maybe it's your gentle demeanor, your golden retrieverness, your calm, but you are a soothing balm to my sometimes too hot burning passion. Woody, my twin, my mirror. I see you. I'm so proud of you, your growth, your desire to be developed, but mostly your passion for those really angry, difficult teenage boys that nobody has a place for. Brian, and then there was one. It's been you the whole time, the whole 8 years, and the footsteps of the mighty David Green, I am sure, are hard to fill. It's been the best of times. It's been the worst of times. But I want you to know that I've never doubted your ability or your loyalty. Never questioned your integrity or your judgment. you are probably one of the best secretary treasurers in the district, and I deeply believe that you are the reason why we are doing so well. Province, thank you. So I would like to end by thanking all of you for coming for 8 years. All of my friends at the table. I would like to thank Suzanne for her honesty. Yeah, because it was tough on me. So thank you. And I'm going to end by saying that the deepest learning takes place through lived experience. You truly have given me the absolute best experience, and I have lived an experience few people will have the privilege of ever knowing. And for this, I am humbled and amazed and grateful beyond words. It has been the greatest honor of my whole life serving you, and I'm going to miss you all. Aishka, all my relations. And no, I did it. I did it. But Woody's crying. Yeah, oh yeah. I got him right in the field. Thank you.
We're on to question period now, and I'll just read this out. Question period is provided at board meetings. The purpose is to ensure that those present in the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during the meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before considering further questions from any individual. Following will help the public develop questions for question period at a board meeting that is in keeping with the goal of respectful and focused meeting. Questions. 1, need to be directed to the chair and not to staff. Need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda. 3, need to be succinct, focused, and not a statement. 4, may not be asked that are related to personnel or directed at an individual trustee. 5, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations. And lastly, number 6, the questioner shall provide their name so that they can be reflected in the minutes. All of the above are directions provided for in policy number 7, board operations. The chair may answer, may defer to staff, or indicate a question may not be in keeping with the above guidelines. The board appreciates the public's interest and wants to ensure a professional meeting is conducted with question period focused on providing guests with the clarification they seek. Trustees also welcome questions from members of the public apart from the question period, and their contact information is available on the school district website. The chair called for questions from the public. Are there any questions? The podium is all yours. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, how y'all doing? My name is Evan for the minutes. Also, brief, succinct statement, not a question. Like, Brian, this guy, budget meetings, boring. Guy delivered great financials. Clean opinion. I mean, if you maybe remember 12 years ago, we came back from summer and we're 13.5 million in the hole. Had the Auditor General here for half a decade. Bless this guy. Okay, questions. Looking at where the budget sits now, and just, particularly looking at, things that are going up in the CPI, inflation related, how are we thinking as a district around classes with consumables, particularly your foods, your textiles, your shop classes? Are we making sort of further allowances for the cost of those in school budgets this year? Or are we simply deferring that to later and seeing how that unfolds?
That'll be part of the budget, amended budget process that we'll have to consider. There was nothing put in for the preliminary budget, but we have some costs that we know we will have to absorb due to inflationary pressures. One of the benefits we do have is with the interest rates going up, it actually is restoring our interest income back to levels pre-pandemic, which will help us offset some of those costs.
So you're expecting that guidance amended budget bylaws February?
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. With sort of the increase in cost of things generally, historically, if you can't afford things in school, there's hardship funds set aside. With everything getting a little more expensive and folks struggling a little bit more. Obviously, it usually goes to the principals first to manage hardship funds in schools. Are there any particular directives or additional funding going to hardship programs in school this fall and onward?
Go ahead.
I'll take this one. So the ministry announced a fund to help students and families, $60 million for the province, which our portion is just shy of $2.2 million. And the point is that that is supposed to be gone through the eyes of a hardship policy, but a relaxed hardship policy. And we have a committee that is being headed up by Assistant Superintendent Marcel Moino to get the feedback on that. He did mention a little bit about that tonight. So those funds will be rolling out to families in forgiveness of fees and those kind of things through a hardship policy. So that will be expanded from what we normally have as a hardship policy.
I appreciate it. Next question. Obviously, every year we're supposed to, Section 82 says we're supposed to have a consolidated schedule of fees available to parents before the beginning of the school year. VSB, great, they publish their schedule of fees for each school on their website, so it's accessible to everyone. Does the district have any plans to publish or make available their consolidated schedule of fees for their schools?
Good question.
Take that away.
Now, I'll just give two follow-ups in case you want to answer them together.
Actually, is there any other questions from the public? Just
Yeah, anybody else got things on?
Evan, you always have such good questions, so
Great.
all right. Go ahead, sir.
So if Mal, you're taking it, really the one is for the board, so I'll defer that. But essentially the two questions that go with that is, this year, is the board satisfied with the average out-of-pocket cost for a student to attend a school? Right? It's agenda fees, it's mandatory PE strips in some schools, which is ridiculous. Provide things for education. Don't make kids buy school branded PE strip. They got shorts at home. So is the board satisfied with the out-of-pocket cost? And do we know the average out-of-pocket costs? Presumably that's somewhere.
I'm going to defer to one of my trustees. Go ahead.
Policy fund is probably one of my biggest passions, and as somebody who's super critical of equity or perceived equity or access, that even before the money from the province, we have one of the most robust hardship funds. That's the easiest to access. That's attached with the least amount of shame that you could ever imagine. It's just paid for. So to me, I'm not too concerned what the actual cost is, because I know that if it's not paid, the district picks it up. And I'm that confident that that happens throughout this district more times than we can count. And that it's done in a way that keeps the dignity of the families intact. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think that secondary piece of that question is the review procedure for the things included in the schedule of fees. I appreciate that the hardship policy pays for that. But things like school branded PE strip, potentially entirely unnecessary to be charging for to begin with. If you read those welcome letters from principals that go out at the beginning of year, just do the Command F for PE strip and you can see who's charging for those. The additional question is, so one of the risks noted in the FSDNA this year was limited funding for mental health issues. I think there's 70K in deferred, 50K in revenue for this year. That's a top risk for the inability to deploy those programs, was noted by the auditors. I'm curious what the board's intent or direction is to mitigate that risk, if mental health is one of the key tenets, but one of the top 3 risks noted for the ability to execute from a funding source perspective or from an operational perspective. What is the directive to make that successful this year?
Super.
So thank you for the question. We do have a wellness committee that is currently looking at the funds and looking at opportunities to utilize those funds so that they go back into schools. So, and I know that Deputy Superintendent Bradford's been working with that committee, and it's a committee of all of our partner groups. And hopefully we'll have an answer really quick on where those funds will be distributed.
And I just want to add too, if I could, the good work that the foundation does in helping families. I know that over the pandemic, I could be wrong on the number, but I believe we gave out to gift cards to families, 600, 600 families. Am I overquoting it? No, 600, I'm getting a nod. So we are doing the district is doing a good job through the foundation, and it's through its own sources as well.
I think the yardstick there is next year, not to see that risk in the FD-SNA from the auditors. Another question, this might be a Brian question. Annual facilities grants. I saw the electric vehicle charging stations were included in that one. How's that project going?
Besides the delay in receiving the
Yeah,
buses of
that whole
a
thing.
substantial period of time. To be honest, there was some hiccups getting the charging stations to work. And when we've talked to other districts, apparently that's been par for the course with every district that's brought on a bus. Apparently, the amperage has to be very finely tuned for buses to do that. They figured out what they think is the secret mix last week. So they're just doing some final tests. So we hope to be getting those things out on the road as soon as possible. So hopefully heading in the right direction, but it wasn't without some hiccups to get our nest there. So
Yeah, fair enough. I've been seeing those electric items hang around there for a while, so I was curious. And last question, on the right-of-way license, it looks like the setback provision in the works extend onto the greenscape, which currently has a frontage of, I think, 12 to 14 trees. I think about 10 of them are immature. There's only 2 mature trees. One sits on the corner of the works. Question 1, is that tree going to be removed? Question 2, does the license require that the city, if they remove trees, replace them on the property?
the license doesn't require, those are township bylaws on what has to happen with trees. We can't dictate that. Whether those are staying or not, I can't answer that. So.
Gotcha.
And Evan, you didn't give us your last name.
I didn't know.
So what's your last name?
Evan's fine. I just need a name. It's like Shakira or Beyonce. Thank you.
Okay.